These are the members of the Board of Health. This is Nicole Perret, Wendy Weeks, and this is the chairman, Mr. Peter Lanza.
And you are?
I'm Chris Knut, K-N-U-T-H. I'm the Director of Public Health.
Good morning.
He's getting there.
This is the matter of United Waste Management of Leominster Limited Liability Corporation with respect to the facility they desire to build at 200 Tanzio Road to accept 1,000 tons per day of municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with, I believe, a 300,000 ton per year limit on the operation. My name is Christopher Myron. I am the hearing officer. I practice law in Springfield, Massachusetts. I've been asked to act as hearing officer. As I said, I'm a lawyer in private practice. I have done several of these hearings, though I'd have to say I've never done one in a venue quite like this, and I don't think I will do one in a venue quite like this again with this many Christmas trees. I am going to ask at the outset, we have a stenographer here, Anna Bowen from the Doris Wong Associates. It is very important to have a good record of these proceedings so that everyone who speaks can have what they say recorded. One thing a stenographer cannot do is record more than one voice at a time. One of my jobs is to make sure only one person at a time is speaking. I was in court once with a federal judge when something of a brouhaha broke out and multiple parties were speaking, and the federal judge pointed out that in his courtroom there was one rule that always obtained, which is when he spoke, nobody else spoke. And I would not arrogate to myself the powers of a federal district judge, but I would request that when I speak, people use that as a call to order of sorts, just because I am trying to protect the record so that everybody can be heard and that your statements are recorded accurately. But I welcome you all who are here this morning to participate, and I have three preliminary observations. First, would you please put your cell phones on quiet, either by silencing them or putting them on vibrate. Secondly, based on my experience as a hearing officer and knowing what the presentation will be, and I'll explain that in a second, and seeing the number of participants who may wish to speak this morning or make a comment, I don't see any reason we can't conclude this hearing this morning. As I understand it, there are no representatives of the 10 citizens group here. Whether or not there are any abutters here may be a question to be straightened out or determined when people speak as to what who constitutes an abutter here. One of the things is if we complete today, that will trigger the board's responsibility to issue a decision within 45 days. It is a tight time frame.
I'm sorry, Chris.
No, that's fine. The department, we do not write on a clean slate here this morning. In September, Matthew Beaton, the Secretary of the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, determined that the environmental notification form that was submitted on behalf of this project adequately described its impact and that the impacts had been mitigated to the full extent practicable and authorized the permitting agencies to proceed. On November 9th, the Department of Environmental Protection determined that the site was suitable for the project as proposed. That is not the end of DEP's inquiry. There is further permitting in the event that the board determines that this is an appropriate siting assignment. I'm grateful to the board for retaining me, and I'm grateful to Mr. Knuth, who was instrumental in coming up with what I hope is a workable format so that everybody can see the presentation and hear the witnesses. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to explain my role as a hearing officer as part of my introductory remarks. I'm going to describe the site assignment process, and I will address some preliminary legal matters. It's my responsibility to ensure that we have a full and fair hearing on United Materials Management of Leominster Limited Liability Corporation's application. I am going to refer to United Materials Management as United Materials, and I invite others to do so as well, unless the context requires otherwise. My job is to make sure that all relevant material evidence on whether the site is suitable for the proposed facility is admitted and heard. I am like a judge in a civil jury trial, which is to say I decide nothing. My job is to conduct the proceedings in an orderly fashion such that the board, as jury, if you will, can make its decision based on the record evidence. I cannot dismiss the appeal. I cannot dismiss the matter or enter summary judgment. So if I am like a Superior Court judge, as I said, then the board is the jury.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have a microphone? Because I can't hear you.
Thank you.
People don't hear
Thank
you.
you for bringing that to my attention. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will conduct this hearing impartially. I am not related to any member of the board or to any party. I am not an employee or agent of the applicant or the city of Leominster, and I have no financial interest whatsoever in the board's decision. My only interest is at the end that people believe they had a full and fair opportunity to participate, and that people think I did a good job. Beyond that, no interest whatsoever. This public hearing is being conducted under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 111, Sections 150A and 150A and a half, which govern site assignments for solid waste facilities, and under the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Site Assignment Regulations, which are Title 310, Code of Massachusetts Regulations 16. That'll be referred to, if it comes up, as 310 CMR 16. These establish the procedures and criteria for submission and review of site assignment applications. While this is a formal process, it's very different from a typical meeting or hearings before a local board or commission. That is not to say it's to be done with courtroom formality. We would like it to be as formal as is appropriate to the proceeding, while at the same time allowing people to feel they are invited and comfortable in making their presentations. I conduct the hearing instead of the chairman, so he can now, along with the other members of the board, focus solely on the testimonial evidence and on asking such questions as they desire. As I said, I am retained for the board. I'm retained by the board, but the applicant pays for my services. This is how it works on several aspects of the site assignment application process. Witnesses are sworn and they testify under oath and are subject to cross-examination. A stenographer will transcribe the hearing, and as I already said, Ann Bowen of Doris Wong will be our stenographer. From my days as a clerk for a federal judge and from my own trial experience, Stenographers really have to be respected, even treated like gold. Ms. Bowen, if you can't understand anyone, or if people are speaking over one another, please speak up so we can all, what it's called, protect the record in the practice. I beg your pardon?
If possible, could you speak up also, even with the microphone?
There are seats closer to the front, sir. I think, on the one hand, I can speak up, but I also think it's part of the dynamics of the acoustics of the room. Do speak up if you can't hear me, but I will try and keep my voice up. Ms. Bowen, please let me know if you need to take a short break. General participation from the audience is not allowed under the regulations. The board can hear only the testimony from recognized parties or participants who are identified in the regulations. This restriction is designed to prevent some free-for-all chaotic discussions and presentations so we can focus on the relevant issues. I do not define what the relevant issues are. The regulations do. And quite frankly, they are intended to limit the range of discussion due to a history of problems that have occurred in the Commonwealth over many years. It is a design program to run tightly and smoothly. The board must review and decide whether this site assignment application is appropriate using the criteria that are set forth in the site assignment regulations. The board may deny the application only if it will present a danger to public health, safety, or the environment based on the siting criteria. So that is our very narrow issue, and I'll repeat it. The board may deny the application only if it will present a danger to the public health, safety, or the environment based on the siting criteria. Now, I mentioned before, if it obtains site assignment from the board, United Materials still must obtain from DEP permitting, including authorization to operate. I have had the opportunity to speak with Jeffrey Blake, who is counsel from Compliment and Page, who is counsel to the board, legal counsel to the board, and with Thomas Mackey to my right, who is legal counsel to United Materials. The purpose of our discussions were to take care of housekeeping matters and try and streamline the exhibit identification process. There was no discussion of substantive matters, which is to be taken care of this morning. Part of the exhibits will be the formal notice that have been published in English and in Spanish in local papers. My understanding from Mr. Knuth is that the meeting has been appropriately posted as a public meeting, and I think documentation relevant to that is available right at the entrance of the building. Is that right, Mr. Knuth?
Yeah, actually outside the city clerk's office is posted.
So, under the regulations, the administrative record consists of documents received by the Board of Health before and during this public hearing. Applicant has prepared a preliminary exhibit list for documents submitted and admitted to date. If it is irritating that I'm working off a script, it is important because I have to cover specific issues so that the public knows them and that they are made part of the record. The order of presentation, Mr. Mackey, on behalf of United Materials, will present their case with witness testimony and demonstrative evidence. Witnesses are subject to cross-examination by Mr. Blake and by members of the board. I would ask Mr. Blake, Mr. Mackey, if they think there are any other preliminary matters that need to be discussed.
We have.
And of course, my phone makes a noise, I beg your pardon. Mr. Mackey, you have the floor. I'm wondering if the most expeditious way to do this was if you could identify to the stenographer each of your witnesses, and then we will swear them collectively.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah, I probably don't need a microphone. People who live in the office next to mine really hate me, because I'm really loud. My name is Thomas Mackey. I'm the attorney for United Materials Management of Leominster, LLC. I'm going to do a really quick introduction, and I will get to the introduction of the witnesses for the court reporter, and also for swearing in when I finish this, if that's okay, Mr. Myron. So let's do a really quick introduction. I don't want to repeat anything that Mr. Myron said, and I'm going to be addressing the board, and I want to make sure that I'm looking at the folks in the audience as well, so I'll probably violate that multiple times. But good morning. So I want to tell you about the process that we've been through so far, and a little bit about what the process is after this, because we're really only at the very beginning of a process, at least here in the city of Leominster. So the purpose of the application is to approve approximately 11 acres of property at 200 Tanzio as a site for a solid waste handling facility. The application materials, which we have here and will introduce into evidence as exhibits for the official record, really demonstrates that the site meets all of the state's site suitability criteria for a solid waste facility and will not cause a danger to the public health, safety, or the environment. What did we do in order to get to this point? First, United Materials Management went through the environmental review process at the MATS Environmental Policy Act Division of the State Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. That involved originally a publication of notice of the environmental review in local papers here in Leominster, as well as in the statewide Environmental Monitor, which is published online and available for everybody online. The Executive Office of Environmental Affairs had a public site visit at the site in order to determine whether the environmental information that had been filed with the state was adequate. And after a public comment period, which was, I believe, about 21 days, the Executive Office determined that the materials that had been submitted were sufficient to describe the environmental impacts and any mitigation necessary, and so that they determined that no further environmental review was required. So that's the first stage of the process. At the same time, in August or so, UMM filed or United Materials, as we decided we were going to call it, filed its application for site assignment with the Leominster Board of Health. That application is also filed with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the Montechusett Regional Planning Agency. At the time, what happens is that they're required to and did file a copy of the application with the local public library. So the DEP, Mass DEP, which is the Environmental Protection Agency for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, their offices are in Worcester, at least for this region. They do an initial review of the application just to make sure that all the paperwork is correct and all the forms have been properly filled out, and that's called administrative completeness. And once that box has been checked off, they instruct the applicant to publish a notice in the newspaper and other places. So that happened, and UMM, United Materials, sent notice to abutters. There you go, perfect time.
Mr. Mackey, if you prefer to use UMM, I think everybody will know to whom you are referring.
Okay, thank you. UMM being the applicant, they're here today. Sent notice, all the other agencies that have previously, Montechusett Regional Planning Agency, the State Department of Public Health, and the like, that the application was deemed complete, and that they also put that in the newspaper locally, in English and Spanish, and they also put that in the statewide environmental monitor. And what that does is it gives the public a comment period on the application to be provided to the DEP, because the DEP goes through its own review of the suitability of the site. And after that public comment period closed, the DEP issued a report saying that the site met all of the criteria for a site assignment. Then published notice was given of this hearing in local papers and also sent to the agencies that were previously listed. And that was in November. What I want to do is just take care of a couple of logistical details with regard to the exhibits. So I have previously provided to both the city solicitor and the hearing officer and to Mr. Knuth a list of potential exhibits as well as copies of all the exhibits. I'm not going to go through that full list now, but what I will do is offer them and ask that they be introduced. Generally speaking, it's mostly materials that the board already has. That the first and foremost is the application. Here's the application. It's about 285 pages of material. It includes a traffic study. And then there are supplementary materials that were submitted to the board over time, which are contained in the exhibits. And I understand there's no objection to the entry, but I just want to act formally to have them put it into the official record.
Is there any objection?
There's no objection.
Okay, great. So I have, in addition to that, so they're right here. I'll bring them over. Mr. Knuth, these are part of the official record, so they need to be kept somewhere, sort of permanent file. And I'll give those to you later on. In addition, what we did was we made additional copies. I think every one of the board members should have a set of copies. Greg, is that package with the...
It is, except for the site suitability report and the determination by the DEP.
Okay, so everybody's got one of those green folders, good, okay. So if somebody refers to an exhibit during the testimony, you can have it right in front of you. Those are courtesy copies. You could do what you see fit with those when we're finished with the hearing. Preferably recycle them. Because that's their business. The application's been available since August, so we're not going to go through every single detail of the application tonight. We're going to have presentations, and people are going to give you an overview of what's in the application materials to the board as well, obviously to the board, but also to the public. So these are our presentations. Scott May, who is the CEO of United Materials Management, will be the first person to present, and he's going to present a PowerPoint presentation. You can see up here on the board, so I guess you'll have to crane your necks and turn around. But, and PowerPoints are also in the exhibit package as well, so we pre-filed those with Mr. Knuth yesterday. This next witness will be Laura Begay, who's a professional engineer who works at Green Seal Environmental. Green Seal Environmental is the environmental consultant that prepared the application material, and she's going to provide an overview of of what the facility is and a little bit about the permitting process. So you're going to hear about the permitting process probably again. Then next will be Greg Workson. Greg is a principal at Green Seal Environmental, and he's going to go through each and every one of the 17 site suitability criteria in some detail so that we have it on the record. It's already in the application materials, and we also have with us today, should you choose to have them present, certainly here available to answer questions if they come up, is Phil Viveros of McMahon Traffic Engineers and Planners. They prepared the traffic impact study that was included with the application materials and also, I believe, filed with the environmental MIPA office initially. So he's here. He can provide a direct presentation if necessary, if you want. Otherwise, he's here available to answer questions or address questions that are directed to us through the chair and the hearing officer. Also, we have Frank Hume here. He's the president of Air and Noise Compliance, who prepared the community noise assessment, which is in the exhibits package, and he's also available to answer questions if they come up through the hearing officer and the chair. Just so we go over sort of procedures for you, and I don't want to be telling you how it goes, but I've done a whole ton of these, as has both Mr. Blake and Mr. Myram, so we're sort of familiar with the process. After you finish the evidentiary portion of the hearing, you're going to deliberate and vote. It's my experience that what the boards often do is they sort of take a vote on the fundamental issue, are we going to approve the site assignment or not? And then they issue a final written decision. I prepared a draft written decision, which I've shared with the board in advance. I believe that Mr. Knuth may have reviewed it already. A city solicitor and the hearing officer also have copies. I have multiple copies available with me tonight, this morning. And we would ask the board to consider to take a vote today, if possible, but if the issues come up that can't be resolved today, that's obviously within the board's discretion. Let's see. I guess before I present our witnesses, I'll ask the hearing officer to swear them in. You've accepted into the record our exhibits. Greatly appreciate the board's attention. It's tedious and competitive. Apologize for that. We fully expect to be able to answer any and all questions that you may have. Once the witnesses are sworn in, I guess we should do them all at one time, right? Or maybe one in a row, however you choose to do so.
Yes.
All of our witnesses who are planning to make presentations are sitting at the front table.
Would all the witnesses who are anticipating testifying please rise? Raise your right hand. You affirm under pains and penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be true, accurate, and complete?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. Having been sworn, I'll offer Scott LeMay. Oh, and one thing we're just going to do, we're going through all of our presentations first. We've talked about this in advance. So each one of our witnesses will make their presentation. We ask that you hold questions until we're completed with those. And then we may come back later on after questions have been posed with further information if the hearing officer or the board chair so agree. Mr. LeMay.
Excuse me, Mr. Becker. The only addition I would make to that is if at the end of a presentation the board or Mr. Blake has questions on the nature of cross-examination, they will be allowed to do so. Mr. LeMay.
Good morning. My name is Scott LeMay. I'm the CEO of United Material Management. Thank you for your time today, board members and members of the public. I'll just give a very brief overview of my experience and can everybody hear me?
This was my fault.
I have about 30 years of experience in the environmental industry. I have a very long history in the city of Leominster. First major contract in my career at the age of 22 years old or so. I did the citywide pickup for the city and did that for multiple years. I sat on the solid waste advisory committee for the city of Leominster. I've lived in Leominster. My kids live around the corner. They work around the corner. I point that out because I get the sense that some people here, that this is the first public presentation that's given to the public in the city of Leominster. And it's very important to me that you understand that we are not interested in adversely impacting your quality of life. And I would just ask that you please give me, before considering the things that may have been said, give me a chance at least to present and so that you can get more data on this project. The first thing I'd like to say is Chris Myram had mentioned the hours of operation. You can thank Frank Bengrazi. We've had discussions that have been ongoing over a period of a couple of months, and we have already changed the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturday, and no Sunday operations. My experience in the business, it dates back in the 80s, where we put some of the first material recycling facilities in North and Central Mass and curbside recycling programs in the 90s. I worked with regulators and communities in trying to clean up some of the unlined landfills that existed that were older and run typically by the town's DPWs to mitigate environmental problems. And I've also managed or developed over 10 processing facilities throughout Massachusetts. I have a very long track record with communities, working with communities successfully, and I have a very long track record working with the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. I'd like to think that is over this amount of decades, to have the compliance record that we have. We dot I's, we cross T's, and we throw every financial resource at every potential issue to cover nuisance issues. Our current business plan is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, there's basically what's a massive disposal capacity imbalance in Massachusetts, and Leominster's in a unique position to be able to have infrastructure in order to be able to connect to facilities for end disposal as far as 800 miles away by using the CSX railroad. So we're looking at transportation, but our other primary business is recycling and resource conservation. And I'll mention that a little bit later when I show you a picture of what we do at other facilities where Leominster's waste would actually end up being processed for further recycling on the construction aspects of the waste. I'm just going to give a general description. You're going to get this from the consultants. You'll see other diagrams, but this is the general area of the facility behind Fraticelli Oil. This is the national grid, obviously the rail line, Tanzio Road, the other industrial land that's here, as well as the over here where the Tanzio has the outdoor concrete plant, and this is the power line that separates the area, and I'm sure many of the residents are familiar with. And this is the bridge that kind of has an elevation and has a natural buffer block to this corner of the area where the nearest residents would be. I'm going to make reference just to this corner right here, because as I go to the next slide, you can see that same corner right in this area. So what we have is the rail line, AIS, Jam Plastics on Tucker Drive, IMA, Quality Masonry, Crest, industrial use, more smaller industrial uses here, and wraps around that was funded for about $2.7 million has been funded so far for an industrial park in here, so we point out the industrial nature of where we believe to be tucked in. Excuse me. This is just we'll speak about this further on with one of the other consultants, but this is just a general overview of what the layout of the facility is. And I want to point out that everything that happens in this building is in a fully enclosed building. This is not a landfill, it's not a dump, it's all on paved surfaces, it's very clean, neat, and orderly. Everything happens in a controlled building that has odor control, dust controls, and misting systems. It fits in just like any other type of industry. It ends up very well landscaped. and we can build an aesthetically pleasing facility there that mitigates any of the potential nuisance conditions. I think sometimes in our industry, there's just a stigma, like that people wonder, just because of our industry, but modern recycling and transfer stations with the current regulations are regulated extremely heavily, as you can hear about the process that we have gone through. But we build aesthetically pleasing and well-landscaped facilities. They're just like any other industrial use. They're similar to packaging and industrial operations. They currently exist in major industrial parks next to multinational companies, and I'm about to show you some pictures of those. We have experience with similar conditions in the same proximity to residents, and I've operated these facilities for years without a single complaint from a resident once they were operated. It's very common. What I do get, though, is I get, and there's, we have some letters here for some ward counselors that have been the counselors in other areas that we've operated, where at the onset we get, there's a landfill, there's a dump, it's going to be dirty, it's going to be noisy, it's going to smell, and it's simply not the case. It's not accurate information. We do a very good job. Those nuisances do not exist. And that came from a ward council that also happens to be, he's the director of Nueva Esperanza out in Holyoke, which is actually a community activist group. So for him to come out and say what the experience was over the period of years was, I thought, quite compelling. Here, I'm going to flip through some quick pictures. This is a facility in Millbury. Demonstrate some of the landscaping. We have a lot more activity here because it's a full-blown processing plant. We have air separators and grinders, and because we end up taking construction material and we separate all that material for recycling. Wood ends up going to Canada to make particle board, and we recycle the metals and the asphalt, brick, and concrete. That's not what will happen here on Tanzio Road. The operation is much more simple. It's simply a building where vehicles deliver material, they get consolidated into larger loads so they can be efficiently transported, and everything moves and leaves quickly. It's not as though we have a waste dump and we have things sitting around that build up odors. The material just gets consolidated and moves very quickly. It's a simple operation. This is a picture of a facility in Devon's, Mass. That's, again, next to multinational companies. It's clean, it's neat, it's orderly. You wouldn't even know this business from any other business. These slides, as I said, they're not real relevant to this facility, other than to let you know that the construction materials that would go to this facility would be delivered to this other facility for further processing so that we can recycle the wood and metal and asphalt, brick, and concrete and other recyclables. That is one of our primary businesses, is to reduce the waste so the least amount gets landfilled. Our goal is resource conservation, and it fits in our business plan because for every pound that we don't have to dispose of, it makes sense for us financially. So our objectives and goals are very much in sync with what the Department of Environmental Protection's goals are regarding recycling. This is a picture of a facility in Taunton. I would highlight that this is what's called a trackmobile. It's a very small machine. It's what moves the rail cars. The engine is small, it's quiet, it moves the speed that we walk at. That's really the only activity where cars get moved on site. CSX comes to the area about twice a week, to 3 times a week. It's not like we would have additional locomotives come to our facility. All we would be doing is adding cars to the existing locomotive and the existing patterns that they use in their industrial pickups. this just demonstrates that what we put on the table is that because there's a disposal crisis, and I'm about to show you some of the slides, and obviously that has imbalances, have massive financial implications on communities. But we've said that we will link and partner with the community for 20 years so that they will always have a facility to use for their municipal vehicles to consolidate the materials so that if there's any new technology or long-term disposal sites that they may be able to use, they won't be trapped to any one facility locally. They'll be able to contract with anybody, and they will be able to use the facility in order to move the material through. I'd also like to point out that, I showed you the company AIS when we were looking at the industrial diagram and footprint, and I think I see their name here. They must have something to do with some of these decorations, but they're the single largest industrial taxpayer in the city of Leominster at just over $300,000. The royalties that we have on the table right now for the city of Leominster, in combination with the property taxes that we would pay, would put us in like the number 2 range at over $150,000 based on the estimates. So we really are trying to make a commitment to be a long-term partner with the city and be a good corporate citizen. This gives an example of all of the landfill closures that have taken place in the past 3 or 4 years, and as well as what will take place in the year of 2019. I won't bore you with the details, but other than that, 2.1 million tons of capacity has been eliminated. So, in this community, having rail and having the ability to consolidate material now is going past Syracuse. That's literally what happens, and by being able to put 100 tons of material on rail to bring it there is an incredibly efficient mechanism for the city of Leominster, because we make one stop at a rail yard in Framingham, it goes all the way to Selkirk and directly to a site. And that reduces carbon emissions. It's actually good for the environment. If to send all smaller vehicles those long distances would produce, by some estimates, more than 4 times the carbon emissions versus utilizing the rail. You can see too that we have this problem in Massachusetts, but we really don't have any relief from the bordering states. They all are having the same issue in New England. So transportation and recycling is incredibly important to communities to be able to control their costs. This is just an illustration of a rail car. I like to point out too that anything that in construction material can go on a typical gondola car because it doesn't have any nuisance conditions, and about 60% of what we believe we would do is going to be that kind of waste. It doesn't have the, it's not MSW, but MSW has to be in sealed cars. Municipal solid waste. So what, in short, what we're able to do is, you have this small area and no options now for wherein disposal is a very few options, and by having rail, you open up options as far as 800 miles, and what that does to every single business, every homeowner, anybody that needs any kind of renovation project, it puts infrastructure, very important infrastructure in this community to be able to control, their destiny for disposal. The conclusion of just my part of the presentation is, I know I showed this industrial area. There's been $2.7 million spent so far, and that to be developed as an industrial park. We're not different than other industries, even though I think that the initial mindset may be that. But what we are is, we're in an enclosed building. Materials come in, materials leave. It's not that different than other businesses, and that investment will get used. And I think in the area that the properties, we have this industrial zone, and it's clear that it'll be developed. I think there were some owners of properties that may have had some differences at times, and they've been resolved, and as a result, the land will get utilized. And I don't think that, our use it's not much different than other industries, and it can be very similar like other industries. As I pointed out too, these facilities can be very well landscaped and aesthetically pleasing. I can tell you that certainly, the mayor of this city is very, very big on landscaping and aesthetics, and we're not talking about some dirty, landfill. We're talking about something that's going to have really nice screening, trees, well landscaped. When you drive by it, like many of the people have said in meetings in Holyoke, years later when we participated, and my colleague Mitch here that's done that, participated in the tech groups there and the neighborhood groups, they said we drove by that for 5 years and didn't even know what type of business it was. Well, as I mentioned, will be a major revenue generator, will be a job generator, and I've discussed what the disposal of railhead construction means to the community in terms of controlling community costs, and that's basically every business, could be your municipal contracts, and renovation and construction projects. But most importantly, and the primary reason that we're here today is to say, does this meet specific criteria and confirm the decisions that have been made from the MEPA office as well as the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection that have opined on this and said that this site meets all of the criteria. And we received those positive determinations from those groups and are here to confirm that. But I think it's really important to mention that we don't ask for waivers. We're not asking for anything. A lot of these facilities, it's almost imperative that they, because of the design and communities, they need waivers to setbacks. And it's taken decades for these setbacks to be developed. So the DEP knows if we're within a certain range, there's almost a presumption that you can comply with nuisance conditions if you deploy modern controls that exist in today's day and age. And those setbacks and rules have continued to change over a period of about 30 years or so. So because we don't need any waivers and we meet all of the setbacks, it makes our job, I think, a little bit easier to ensure that we have the ability to effectively manage nuisance conditions. And I think we have clearly demonstrated that with the consultants that we've hired, as well as the review that's happened of all of those consultants' work. I mentioned that modern systems and controls, they assist with this. We're going to hear more details regarding that, but the general piece is that inside the building there's an atomized misting system that's going to get talked about a little bit more, that also has the ability to control odor in the event that we needed to put an agent in there in order to do that. Everything's in a building. The mist is actually at all of the doors as well, so that it's a controlled environment in the building. And as I mentioned, it's material in, consolidated material out, and it's all happening in an enclosed building in a controlled environment. I think another misconception is that in our industry that we have this huge amount of traffic, and it's not the case in comparing us to other industries. If you were to have a FedEx terminal, there'd be 2,800 trucks a day. Box store is 6,000. We're right next to AIS, which is a major industry. Many of these major industries have vehicle trips over 500. We have the most conservative estimates in our analysis because we say what is the very worst case. We know that we cannot run this facility at full capacity all the time. The history in Massachusetts says that most of them run at about 60%. The reality, and even if you run higher than that, you can't contract with your customers to shut them off every time that you're going to break your daily limit. So as a result, they don't run at full capacity. There's a seasonal nature. We don't consider the fact that certain vehicles that deliver remove waste, and as a result, in our analysis, we show that every pound that gets removed is in a separate empty truck coming to the facility, and that's not the case. We also don't consider the fact that 10 vehicle trips can fit on a train, and material leaves in a train, but we did the worst case analysis that we wouldn't use any trains, so that our analysis of vehicle trips is very high, and there's also a percentage in there that consists of the 24 or so employees that are in the analysis. So, we believe that, we're in a place that is zoned, and when I mentioned, every single property that abuts us is buffered by industrially zoned property. And we think the infrastructure, there's 10,600 vehicle trips on average on 117. There was a reason that this park was funded for industry, and we look forward to doing a great project, and I want to make sure that the public knows as well that this is the first public meeting in Leominster, and I know you've heard a lot of very procedural events that take place, and as a result, it's going to be targeted at specific criteria, but I put my cell phone number out at all of the nearby homes, and I would hope that anybody can use that. If you don't have questions answered, this is not the last stop. There's more permitting. I'm happy to walk the site with people, continue to have more dialogue, so that we have community involvement, and that we do the best that we can to not impact your quality of life. Thank you.
Mr. Blake, members of the board, do you have questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you talked about the rail car, the little machine. How many of those do you expect to have in operation?
We have one.
Just one?
One track mobile that moves the cars.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have questions or no?
At the end of the presentations, we'll have the opportunity for participants to speak. For now, it's members of the board's council can ask questions in the nature of questions, informational or cross-examination.
Excuse me, you asked how many cars, he answered track.
That's what I meant. The small vehicle that he said will move the cars, it's called a track mobile, it moves the cars onto the tracks.
I'm thinking track.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mackey, unless there's further from the board, then
Okay, thank
your
you.
next witness.
I call Laura Gay, a professional engineer from Green Seal Environmental. Thanks, Mitch.
I'm hoping I won't use the mic. Can everyone hear me okay? As is? Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
As the hearing officer already stated and Mr. Mackey stated, we're here
Can't hear you. I think you're going to have to use the mic.
All right. Just trying not to. As the hearing officer and Mr. Mackey already stated, we're here today to discuss the proposed transfer station to be located at 200 Tanzio Road. The property is just over 13 acres in size, of which we are site assigning approximately 11 acres for a solid waste handling facility. The facility will have a daily capacity of 1,000 tons per day and an estimated annual capacity of 300,000 tons per year. The facility will accept construction and demolition debris, which we refer to as C&D, bulky waste, and municipal solid waste, which we refer to as MSW. These materials will be accepted and managed within a proposed 32,500 square foot building located within the site assigned area. The other physical features of the facility includes pavement for internal access roads, truck scales, the rail lines, stormwater controls, utilities, landscaping, and fencing. As shown here on this locus plan, the site is located off Route 117 in the southeastern central portion of Leominster. This plan here shows the zoning districts in the area of the site. Our property is outlined in the bluish color, is industrial zoned. The industrial zone properties are shown in the light green color. And as Scott has already showed you through the aerial photos, the property is surrounded by other industrial properties with residential areas further beyond. So to orient you, the board, to these zoning areas and abutting land uses on our site plan, where north is to the right and not up as the other plans were. I'm going to refer to our existing conditions plans here on the board. So to the east of the site is Tanzia Road, industrial properties here, residential beyond. To the north of the site is industrial zoned land with multi-use commercial property beyond that. To the west of the site is the CSX rail line with industrial properties beyond that and residential in the southwest corner here. And then to the south of the site is undeveloped industrial land with additional industrial property off Tucker Drive further. Again, up on the screen, this is our existing conditions plan for the site. It's the same one that I have here on the board. To further familiarize you with the site and its existing features, we have this, the site property line extends here. To the north, again, we have the electrical easement with transmission towers. Further to the north, almost off property, there's Fall Brook, associated wetlands, and riverfront area. Again, to the east, Tanzia Road. To the south, there's an unnamed stream with associated wetlands and riverfront area here. Again, to the west, the CSX rail line. Another item to note that Scott had touched on is there is a bridge and another major topographical barrier here to the properties that are further west. As you can see from the existing topography here, maybe you can't in the back, and I apologize for that. I can switch back
Back up the slides.
to the slide.
Thank you.
So the site is relatively flat through here, and it's level with Tanzia Road. There's a large grade change, goes upslope to the rail line. The site as is sparsely vegetated. It's been disturbed, and there's some areas of debris piles. So Scott had this in his presentation. This is our proposed conditions plan. It's a conceptual plan. I also have it here before. So the proposed facility layout includes the handling building located here, which all the materials that come to the site will be handled within. It will be equipped with a dust and odor control misting system, fast closing doors, and trench drains located at each of the doors inside the building. The building's been situated such that the tipping doors is facing northeast, which will provide additional mitigation to the closest residential property, which is to the southwest. There will be 2 truck scales proposed here, one for inbound trucks and one for outbound trucks. There will be a scale house located in between these 2 scales. The rail spur will be located along the western property line, and the rail car storage will be here. Access to the facility will be controlled with fencing and gates at the Tanzio Road entrance. And on this plan, we've also shown areas designated for future stormwater controls, one being a detention basin here, and some areas for infiltration systems next to the building. So this plan is our conceptual layout of the inside of the building. It's the same plan that I have here on the board. The handling building will have 6 doors. There's 4 doors proposed on the east side for tipping, and there's 2 doors for the loadout bay located on the west side of the building. This loadout bay will be used for both rail cars and trucks. The rail cars will access the loadout bay from the west, and trucks can access the loadout bay from either door, depending on need. So as shown in this plan, there's 2 areas designated for storage and inspection. Storage of MSW is on the south side of the building. Storage for C&D will be on the west. As I mentioned before, the building will be equipped with environmental controls, including 2 fast-closing roll-up doors. These can be used to quickly contain any dusty or odorous materials that may come into the facility. There will be an atomized misting system, which will provide a fine mist that will adhere to any dust particles and help them settle out from the air. Deodorizers can also be added to this misting system such that it can provide odor control if necessary. There will be trench drains located at each of the 6 doorways. These will prevent any potentially generated liquids from leaving the building. The trench drains will be either connected to a tight tank or the sewer system, sanitary sewer system. Additional exterior environmental controls include paved surfaces to prevent generation of dust from vehicular traffic, and stormwater treatment controls that will be designed to adequately treat and retain stormwater. So this plan shows some truck turning movements on site. It's the same plan that I have here on the board. So we use a modeling program to demonstrate how trucks will generally move about the site. In this case, we modeled for a large truck trailer with a wheelbase of 65 feet. We call this a WB65. This represents the largest trailer that would normally access the site. So the top 4 figures show how trucks will back into each of the 4 tipping doors. The second row shows how those same trucks will exit those doors. The lower left figure here shows truck movements entering and exiting the site onto Tanzio Road. The blue truck path represents incoming trucks, and the green is outgoing trucks. As you can see from this figure, like this on the board, people in the back, all the trucks will enter and leave the facility, turning right or south onto Tanzio Road directly to Route 117. No truck traffic will go north and access 117 through Aspinwall or Malvern Street. And then finally, the lower right-hand figure shows conceptual truck movements just around the building. So trucks using the facility bringing incoming waste are called inbound trucks. Inbound trucks will enter the site at Tanzio Road entrance and proceed to the inbound scale, following markings on the pavement or signage. They'll weigh in and they'll proceed to one of the tipping doors as directed by scale house staff or tipping floor staff that will be located at the building. These trucks will back in and they will tip inside the building. Once tipped, the materials will be inspected by tipping floor staff for waistband items, such as TVs, white goods, etc. Depending on the inspection, the materials will either be moved to one of the respective storage areas on the side of the building. It will be separated out for additional inspection, or it will be reloaded into the truck if the load is rejected for some reason, or it can be loaded directly into one of the outbound containers, being a rail car or a truck trailer. C&D is also inspected for waistband items, which are separated out prior to loading the C&D into an outbound container. Unlike the MSW, which is sent to final disposal, the C&D is instead sent to a processing facility to sort and further recycle the materials. It's likely that C&D will be sent to the UMM sister facility in Millbury, as Scott had mentioned and shown you pictures of earlier. So once tipping is complete, the trucks will exit the building and proceed to the outbound scale to weigh out. Then it will exit the facility, again taking a right onto Tanzio Road to access 117. So trucks accessing the site to remove waste from the facility are called outbound trucks. Outbound trucks will follow the same entry procedures. They'll enter the site, proceed to the inbound scale to weigh in if necessary, and then it will proceed to and back out into either the loadout bay or the tipping floor. The loadout rail bay will be the primary loadout location. However, trucks can be loaded on the tipping floor if necessary after hours. So once full, the outbound trucks will exit the building. They'll weigh out on the outbound scale, and again leave the facility taking a right onto Tanzio Road. Will be slightly redundant to previous presentations, but I'd like to provide the board with a summary of the permitting and design process required for this project. Again, we started the process by filing with MEPA. MEPA conducts a broad scope environmental impact review of the project and requires certain reporting based upon certain thresholds. Our project triggered a review threshold related to solid waste, which required us to submit an environmental notification form. In response, we received an approval from the Secretary in September. This approval allowed us to proceed with the next steps of permitting and confirmed that no additional NEPA review is necessary. This approval is in your informational packets as Exhibit Q. We concurrently submitted the site suitability application to DEP, which assessed the site for suitability according to siting criteria, such as setbacks and proximity to sensitive environmental receptors. DEP issued a positive site suitability this past November, which then moved the project to the site assignment process, which is what we are here for today. Once the site assignment process is complete, we'll move through local permitting to advance and finalize the design. So local permitting efforts following this process with the Board of Health include submitting applications to the Planning Board for a special permit and site plan review, and a conservation commission for an order of conditions for work in proximity to the resource areas that I pointed out earlier on the plans. So we flip back to this DEP slide here. So as we finalize the design through the local permitting process, we will then submit that final design to Mass DEP for an authorization to construct. Following construction, a final application will be submitted to DEP, proving that the facility was built in accordance with the design plans for an authorization to operate permit. So that concludes my overview of the proposed facility.
Members of the board, do you have questions, or Mr. Blake?
You talked about that there would be no traffic on Aspinwall or Melbourne.
Correct.
Is it, trying to think how to word this most efficiently, is access to that area going to be impossible, or is it going to be something that you manage on site?
It's going to be something that we manage on site. Trucks and haulers will be provided with information once the facility is up and operating, which gives them delivery procedures, and that the traffic plan and the route to the site will be set, and that will be restricted that they must access Tanzania Road from Tanzania Road.
Will it be physically difficult for trucks to use that area? I'm asking.
Can I defer to?
Yes, I want to know, has everybody heard the questions? If I could characterize it as, with the turns to Aspinwall Road, is that a matter of physical impossibility, or is that a matter of procedures to be presented to drivers and to be enforced by the facility? Is that a fair characterization of the question?
So we'll put a sign that says right turn only, leaving the facility. We're not in control of the public road and, you know, whether or not that could be blocked. I can tell you that immediately when we looked at this site, we said it would be completely inappropriate for trucks to drive over anywhere exiting towards Aspinwall or through the residential neighborhood. We would actually revoke someone's right to use the facility. I'm not saying if somebody went on a GPS and, you know, it happened one time a month, or so, you know, that we're just going to tell somebody that they're banned. But we really do not want to disrupt people's quality of life by trucks driving right through the middle of that, you know, residential neighborhood. And we don't deal with just the roadway system there in general. Would not be conducive to what we want to do.
Okay, and now I'd like to turn my question to council. What is the Board of Health's, what are our options if that did occur?
Well,
Again, could you repeat the question, Mr. Blake, so that to make sure the audience hears?
She was asked what the Board of Health's option would be if, in fact, rather than going left like they're supposed to, the trucks continue to go right. And in my opinion, what you could do as part of this site assignment, and I have seen this done, is one of the conditions, there would be a requirement that the establishment have rules and regulations, of which one of them would be you can't go right. And in their rules and regulations, I've seen where there's been, first offense is a warning. A second offense is suspension of your privilege to come to this facility for a week, for 2 days, for 5 days, and then progressively from there. We could require the applicant to have something like that in place. And as the applicant has already just said, they are willing to, if it continues to be a problem, they're willing to ban these folks from the facility. So there is a financial incentive for them not to turn right.
Mr. Blake, we proposed a condition that said that the trucks would have to, from a regulatory standpoint, travel directly to 117.
You did, but my response is a little bit more than that. What we could say is you need to have a regulation. We need to see that regulation that says if you do this more than, pick a number. Well, as he had indicated,
My son drives down.
Excuse me. This can come up in discussion. I'm sorry to cut you off, but as long as everyone can hear, this discussion continues. It's a matter of Mr. Blake and examination on behalf of the board, and you can follow up at a subsequent time.
So, whatever your regulations are, that it would be in your regs and it would be in writing.
We'd be completely happy to have a reasonable condition, regulation on it, that, so that we can comply with the condition that we propose, because we don't think it's appropriate. We don't want that to happen. So as a result, we need to make sure that it won't.
Thank you.
So fairly characterized to be a matter of the board using its authority to limit and to incorporate in its approval specifics, perhaps a specific schedule of sanctions to drivers who do not follow the protocols of which directions to turn. Is that fairly stated?
Yes.
Further questions, Mr. Gabriel?
Did we, if I may?
Yes.
Did we have a traffic count? I was taking notes before. Is there a number of trucks that are going to be going in there every day that we're going to, maybe perhaps your traffic study guy will say that, so I won't steal his thunder.
Yeah, I would have to defer to him.
Okay.
I don't have that information on top of my
And with respect to the term tipping or tip,
Yeah.
can you explain to the audience what tip means?
Tipping is the physical act of the truck raising up to dump the materials.
And that's all done inside the building.
That is all done inside the building.
And with respect to loading the rail cars, can you explain how that's done to the audience?
Yes, so there will be equipment inside the building which will take the dumped materials and physically place them into the rail car.
And the rail car will be in the building?
The rail car will be in the building. The building floor elevation will be 4 feet higher than the floor elevation of the rail car, such that the equipment can easily fill the rail car.
And who's going to be able to bring waste and debris to the facility? Is that just commercial, or will it be a local component?
I believe it would be both, but I would defer to Scott on who he is planning on.
Mr. LeMay, did you hear the question?
Sorry, Mr. Blake, could you ask it again?
Yeah, sure. Who's going to be allowed to bring debris, waste, municipal solid waste to the facility? Will that just be commercial trucks, or are you going to allow local residents to be driving in and out?
At this point, local residents would not be driving in and out. We're working with, we realize that the city's under contract right now for a few more years, and we're looking at a variety of different options that to be able to, whether that's at a different location for drop off, but at this current time, the plan is for it only to be commercial.
Thank you.
Anything further from the board? Mr. Mackey, can you call your next witness?
So our next witness is Gregory Worson, who's principal at Greenfield Environmental, and he's ready to go over each one of the site suitability criteria.
Mr. Gay, are you through with this presentation, board? Are you going to use it?
I am.
Yeah, this presentation is the same one. It's the same.
Oh, you're going to use it?
The board.
Oh, the board?
Yeah, are you going to use this board?
Let me take questions.
No, I have no questions.
You want me to take it down?
Yeah, I'll take
How about I just remove this one?
Fine.
You can see right
Perfect.
through. Good morning. For the record, my name is Greg Worson from Greenfield Environmental. I I did want to answer Mr. Blake's comments with respect to truck trips. The inbound delivering trucks was estimated to be 77 inbound vehicles per day. You'd have 24 employee trips inbound, and I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 40 outbound tractor trailers if the rail was not utilized.
1,000 tons is 42 tractor trailers.
Excuse me, again, please allow the presentation. There will be opportunity to inquire subsequently.
My portion of the presentation really won't have any plans or drawings. It's criteria that we look at through the Code of Massachusetts Regulations 310 CMR 1640. There's two subsets of regulations. One is facility-specific criteria, which means that you're looking at different criteria depending upon what type of solid waste facility you have, either a landfill, incinerator, or a transfer station or recycling facility. And the second is general criteria that all facilities look at. And this is more of a quantitative assessment, which is that you're either in it or you're not. And as Mr. LeMay pointed out before, we are not requesting for any waivers, so I can go pretty fast through this because we are not in any of the areas which you would have to request a waiver for. So I'm just going to hit these, and then if you have any questions about the particular attribute of it, I can go into further detail. So the first criteria is, are you in Zone 1 of a public water supply? And we are not within Zone 1 of a public water supply. The second criteria is, are you located within an interim wellhead protection area, also known as an IWPA, or a Zone 2 protection area, which is a protection district that protects public water supply wells. We are in neither of those zones. The third criteria is a Zone A. A Zone A is an area that's protected due to a public water supply, such as a reservoir or a tributary that feeds a reservoir, and we are not in a Zone A of a public water supply. And we also did research with Mass GIS as well as municipal research with respect to private water supplies. We are not within 250 feet up gradient, nor are we within 500 feet down gradient of a public water supply. With respect to occupied facilities, they have a number of facilities in, occupied facilities include residential dwellings, prisons, bedded healthcare facilities, schools, children's preschools, licensed daycare centers, senior centers, or youth centers. We have done our reconnaissance through a multitude of bits of research through Mass GIS, Google Earth, as well as field reconnaissance, and the proposed waste handling area is not within 500 feet of any of those attributes. With respect to a riverfront area, we do have two riverfront areas associated with the site, one being Fall Brook, and the second one being an unnamed stream, Fall Brook to the north, and the unnamed brook to the south. The waste handling area, which is the peripheral of the building, the 32,500 square feet, is not located within a riverfront area. Depth of groundwater. The requirements of the regulations require that there be a 2-foot separation between the waste handling area, which would be the floor, the tipping floor, and groundwater. We will far exceed the requirements set forth within the required 2-foot separation. So we satisfy that criteria. Agricultural lands. We hired a company called Apex to go out and assess the site for agricultural land of prime, unique, or of statewide or local importance. These soils do not occur within the area to be site assigned, the 11 acres. And also based on the detailed soil survey, Greensale also confirmed, as determined with the field survey conducted by Apex as well as Mass GIS, that the facility meets the requirements of the Code of Massachusetts Regulations, which is 1640, Section 4, Paragraph A, for agricultural lands. Regarding traffic impacts, I am not going to go into significant detail with it. We do have Phil here, Phil Viveros from McMahon Associates, that can entertain specific questions regarding level of surface and truck traffic trips and everything like that. McMahon did prepare a detailed traffic report and has opined that the traffic impacts of the proposed development located at 200 Tanzio Road will not constitute a danger to the public health, safety, or the environment, taking into consideration a couple pieces of information, including traffic congestion, pedestrian and vehicular safety, and roadway configuration. And as I said, McMahon will be available to entertain any further questions by the board or the public. We also had to look at a lot of different criteria for wildlife and wildlife habitat. The site is not adjacent or within an area where there are rare plants or animals or exemplary natural communities. We are not located, it says NHESP, which stands for Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. We are not in a listed habitat, and we are right on the peripheral, about a half a mile away from the closest listed habitat. We are not anywhere near any ecologically significant communities, according to the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. And we are not in any wildlife management areas or in close proximity to any. Based on that, we believe that the siting of the proposed facility will not have an impact on wildlife habitat or any state wildlife management areas, as none are within approximately a half mile of the site. With respect to that, if we were close, the state asks you to take a look at what mitigation measures your facility will take to ensure that you don't impact this. This is a general criteria. We have to understand that this facility, being a transfer station on paved surfaces within a closed building with environmental controls, is looked at a little differently when you assess this. These pieces of regulation also hold true for incinerators as well as open air landfills. So we're not presenting any mitigation other than what we have for environmental controls on site, because we don't believe that there will be any impacts on it. The site is not within, adjacent, or in close enough proximity to directly impact the air, water, or soil-borne pollutants to any type of ACC in the immediate area. The closest one is almost a half a mile away, I believe, to the east, associated with, I believe, Johnny Appleseed Park. Upon research with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the closest state park, of which there's an ACEC part of that state park, is located almost a half a mile away, 0.36 miles to the east. The site is separated by Tanzio Road, then industrial facilities, then a neighborhood, then Route 117, then other residential areas, and then you get to the park. With respect to state and municipal conservation lands, based on our distance and nothing on-site, adjacent to the site, or around the peripheral of the site, we do not believe that we would impact the use or enjoyment of any state and municipal parklands. Therefore, this criteria is satisfied.
Excuse me again. Keep going.
MDC reservations, that stands for the Metropolitan District Commission. They actually changed the title to DCR, so now it's the Department of Conservation and Recreation. We reviewed their website, and there are no DCR or MDC reservations within a half mile of the facility. Additionally, the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, which is now the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, there are no lands with conservation, preservation, agricultural, or watershed protection restrictions within a half mile of the subject site. With respect to conservation lands, there are no close conservation lands in close proximity to the site. Because of the environmental controls that we have operating entirely within an enclosed building, this facility will not present a threat to health, safety, welfare, or the enjoyment of any public conservation lands. Air quality impacts. Air quality is regulated under another section of the Code of Massachusetts Regulations, 310 CMR 7. There's a few things that facilities have to assess because these facilities are coupled with other facilities like landfills where you burn landfill gas, or processing facilities that might use diesel-powered equipment, fixed equipment. This facility doesn't have any. It will use rolling stock, which will be Tier 3 or Tier 4 compliant, and we don't have any fixed equipment on the site that would consume fossil fuels.
You might pause and describe what
There's 4 different tiers of rolling stock equipment for off-road. There's Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4.
and rolling stock means
Rolling stock is, I call it yellow iron. That could be a loader or an excavator or a skid steer, something to that effect that would help the logistics inside the building for the separation and loading of waste either into trucks or rail cars. So the applicant will commit to using the latest technologies, which is Tier 3 and Tier 4 equipment, which means that he'll have to purchase modern equipment to run this facility. I think Scott covered a little bit about vehicular emissions and how the railroads are 4 times more effective in the reduction of emissions, specifically greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions. Locomotives, even though they burn more fuel per hour, they carry much more weight. So this facility actually meets the intent of both the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, greenhouse gas policy, as well as what the Department of Environmental Protection is looking for with respect to emission reductions through consolidation and the use of larger modes of transportation. The next few slides are going to be a little repetitive because, well, actually this one won't, but when I get into dust, odor, and vectors, it will be a little repetitive. But how does this site prevent particulate and emissions and odor? We do it by constructing an enclosed building. We have the ability to close the doorways when necessary. We then have environmental controls. The environmental controls are on site, so we don't have tracking issues. We have paved surfaces that can be swept on a periodic basis. Sweeping. And then we have the building, the 32,500 square foot approximate size building. That the tipping and consolidation activities can happen within the building. And then we also have the environmental controls. I refer to it as a misting system or an atomized misting system. It's a high pressure system that is suspended from the ceiling and also around the peripheral of all the doorways. High pressure water gets forced through very small nozzle heads and makes a very fine mist. You might have seen it at sports events that they use the same type of technology for cooling or something for athletes. You can also, with the misting system, which adheres to a dust particle and makes it fall out to the floor a lot quicker, you can use a Venturi pump to add odor counteractants. You can pick a scent or an odor that it's a masking agent or an odor neutralizing agent with respect to controlling odors.
And when it hits the floor, it goes where?
If you could, please, if you could, it's a good question for us to say that if you would.
So this noise at this facility will be minimized by conducting all tipping, handling, and loading of waste materials within inside the peripheral of the closed building. Through the design, as well as the adequate separation by not requesting any waivers and having the requisite setbacks to receptors such as residential dwellings, we believe that nuisance noise will not be present at the site or present an off-site nuisance noise condition. As part of this, we did hire Frank Kuhn and his firm from Air and Noise Compliance to conduct some ambient and some estimated sound assessments for this facility. We did so by collecting data on the site for our ambient, as well as taking Mr. Kuhn to a fully operational site to collect real-time sound data so he could present his conclusions. The conclusions of his report are that this site will not only meet the Massachusetts noise policy, but it will also meet any of the Leominster ordinances with respect to sound as well. Litter and mitigation. Litter and mitigation, you know, the number one way to control litter at the site is do it within the confines of the building, which the applicant is already committed to. We will maintain the tractor and rail entry. We'll maintain tractor and rail entrance doors in the closed position when they're not in use as practical. We will maintain on-site equipment that will remove materials on a frequent basis. I think that was explained by Scott. This facility doesn't make money by aggregating the material on the floor. It only has a certain amount of capacity, which means that this material needs to move to make its business effective. They will cover all trailer and rail car containers after bulk loading, and they will also implement a daily inspection program as part of the Mass DEP approved operation and maintenance plan. Just so you know, as part of the next submittal requirements, they have, with the Department of Environmental Protection, they have to submit an authorization to construct permit. Within that permit, there will be a draft operation and maintenance plan, as well as we talked about probably some policy associated with the delivery procedures manual that would regulate ingress and egress to and from the facility. The third plan that's usually submitted is a waste man compliance plan on how they will be compliant with respect to the waste man. How Scott is compliant with respect to his construction and demolition debris is he's going to aggregate that construction and demolition debris. He's going to bring it to his processing plant in Millbury where they extract the commodities. What's left over for that is a residual material, a non-recyclable material that would be backhauled to this facility that could be loaded into the rail cars. That's the synergy between the two facilities. And with that, so there's a waste man plan that's already gets submitted. The Department of Environmental Protection will comment on these plans. The city will also receive these plans as part of the authorization to construct application. We'll take comments, and then we finalize the plans when you submit your authorization to operate, and that is really their operating procedures that they have to abide by. Dust mitigation, a little similar to litter and odor, conducting all waste handling activities within the confines of the building, maintaining the proper equipment on site to remove the material on a frequent basis, covering the trailers and rail cars following bulk handling, sweeping the paved surfaces, the tarmac areas, so your ingress and egress areas, and the interior of the building as needed to minimize the potential for dust. Using the atomizing misting system within the confines of the building that's strategically placed. As I said, it's generally suspended from the ceiling above tipping areas, stockpiles, maybe the rail car loadout area, and around the peripheral of the doorways. What the water does is it comes out, the technical is, it comes out in a fine droplet. And what it has is it has weight. It's always falling to the floor. It will attach itself to a dust particle which falls down to the floor. There's waste on the floor, that material just gets loaded up into the rail car or the truck, and it leaves the facility. The object is to get it out of the atmosphere, get it back onto the ground, and handled with the rest of the material. The other dust mitigation measures are, as I stated before, closing the rail car doors once the rail car and transfer trailers are situated inside the building. Closing the tipping doors is practical when there is a potential for nuisance conditions. And the use of additional water if they need, they can have hoses or portable misters or other forms of engineering controls on site to control dust as necessary. Vectors. Vectors is a nice way of saying rodents or seagulls. How do we control vectors at the facility? Well, the first thing is that the facility will be required to contract with a vector management firm. It's a third-party firm that will come and inspect the facility. They'll also lay out bait traps as a matter of protocol. The second thing on how we can, or the third bullet point is how we're conducting this indoors. The material is moving very frequently. By moving the material on and off the floor very frequently, you're deterring vectors or vector populations from breeding or anything like that. Sweeping the paved areas and paved surfaces, not only on the outside peripheral of the building, but on the inside of the building to have proper turnover of the waste material. And instituting a daily policy of inspecting the facility. There will be usually at the back of their operation and maintenance plan, there's an inspection form that the facility manager or shift supervisor will have to walk around the facility on the interior and exterior, and it's a checkoff box. Was it dusty? Okay. Did you sweep? What time did you sweep? So that we're creating a good record with respect to compliance at this facility, and those documents are available for the Board of Health to review during any unannounced inspection, as well as the Department of Environmental Protection. Odor mitigation, I think I covered it more so with the dust and the, sorry. Thank you, John. Odor mitigation, the very same protocols as you would do to mitigate dust is how you mitigate odor. The only real difference in this is that on the odor side, we can have a pump that puts in odor counteractants within the dust suppression system. And that could be metered in. It's on a Venturi pump. You can adjust the control of the flow of the solution. It's environmentally safe. It's human toxicology safe. It's okay. And it's a common practice in engineering control at many transfer stations that handle municipal solid waste. Bird hazards to air traffic, I just explained the two things that are referred to as vectors. One was rodents, the second one is seagulls generally. When I was a kid, going to the landfill, you saw a lot of seagulls and everything congregating. This isn't the case for this facility because they don't really track down, they don't have the ability to land on the material and forage or anything like that because everything's on the inside of the building. And we also won't present a threat to air traffic, A, for that reason, and B, the closest airport is the Fitchburg Airport, located approximately 2.95 miles to the north of the site. Should vectors get attracted, such as seagulls, the next deterrent factor is that they actually do building wiring to keep birds off the buildings. It's basically piano wire or strong monofilament line so that the seagulls don't want to land on a building. I haven't seen it done at any of the transfer stations that I work at, but I do install renewable energy, so I had to put it on a building where we're next to a marina. So I've seen it work. It works perfectly. I don't think that it'll need to be used in this instance. Size of the facility. Within the site suitability application, the size of the facility, the building, 32,500 square feet. The site assigned area, 11 acres. How the waste can flow through the facility with respect to truck moving patterns. The ability to have two scales. Even though we have an inbound and an outbound scale, either scale can be used for either purpose. If there's not any inbound vehicles and two trucks want to weigh on the outbound, as long as they're directed properly, that can happen to move the facility in and out of the facility more effectively. And then capacity factors. Capacity factor is to take a look at the average time that waste enters the facility, tracks around the facility, backs in the facility, dumps their load, and leaves the facility. We've also looked at capacity factors. This facility can handle 3 to 4 times the capacity factor. What that means is we're asking for 1,000 tons per day. If there was a steady flow of traffic and they were tipping at the average rates which we measured at other facilities, this facility could tip 3,000 to 4,000 tons per day. So we believe that with the size of the building, the size of the paved surfaces, the capacity factors, and a look at all the other transfer stations that we're familiar with in the state of Massachusetts as well as other states, that it's appropriately sized for its use and its volume. A few other things that we had to look at was areas previously used for was the area previously used for solid waste disposal. We did not identify that any solid waste landfill disposal activities were identified not only at the proposed site but at the budding properties. The other thing is to take a look at, are there existing disposal facilities? Disposal means incinerators or landfills. Are there any existing disposal facilities that the city has that are active? And the answer is at the present time, no. We took a look at other sources of contamination or pollution. You have to remember that this is a general criteria, which means that a landfill would have to look at this as well as an incinerator to look at the compound effects of a particular solid waste facility. In this instance, because we have paved surfaces, environmental controls, and everything, we believe that this facility fully complies with that criteria, and this facility will not add any contamination or pollution that would be a threat to the health, safety, welfare, and the environment. And then regional participation. Does the facility participate in the regional disposal effort, whether it be an incinerator or a landfill? What we looked at is, does this complement local need? As Scott brought up, with disposal capacity over 2.2 million tons has gone away or is going away within the next 12 months. So in 2019 and 2020, there's going to be a certain need for disposal. We're shifting to an exportation state, very similar to Connecticut. There's still a moratorium on the construction of new incinerators on the site. So with respect to disposal, exportation is the only avenue that we will have in the foreseeable future. And so this facility does provide the Commonwealth and the local region with long-term and economically viable options to handle not only your MSW and your C&D, but also to use sister facilities to satisfy the waste management plan with respect to recycling. With that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Orson. Does the board have questions? Mr. Blake?
I have just a couple of very quick ones, if I could. You talked about the odor control system and the dust control system, which is going to be water, basically making rain inside the building.
I wouldn't say it's making rain. It's such a fine mist.
Well, that's not really. Okay, so
the
bottom line is it's going to be water that gets on the floor. It's not going to be loaded into the trucks. Is that going to go into the gutters that you have, the drains that you have?
I'm going to give you a two-part answer. The first answer is that the atomizing misting system actually does not create puddles on the floor. It may make the material moist, but it's not coming in at a rate that would create a puddle. Secondarily, as Laura explained, each door, the only outlets of any liquids would be the 6 doorways, 2 rail car and truck loadout tunnel doors, and the 4 tipping floor doors will all be outfitted with trench drain system. The trench drain system would go to a industrial wastewater holding tank, or we would get a discharge permit with the local POTW.
I do an awful lot of these, and I think one of the most asked question or concern is when you're hauling stuff to and from a facility, is waste flying off the trucks. You've indicated that you will cover all out, basically after loading all your trucks. Would you be willing to, or do you have something in place where part of the regulations, like you can't turn right, is that if you come into this facility without a cover, you get 1, 2, 3 strikes, and then we're going to start tagging?
I would concur with that. What will be developed with this facility will be what's called a delivery procedure manual, which will give traffic routing, penalties, and stuff like that. I think that's a very fair condition. It's also a mass DOT condition with respect to covering the vehicles, whether it's a small, ready done trailer that's pulled by a local commercial truck that, let's say, did a roofing job. Yes, I would concur. And a lot of the outbound vehicles, such as the roll-up containers, they're using what's called an auto topper. So that auto topper, even though the waste container is empty, usually the auto topper goes back down over the vehicle when they proceed out. The packers are a different thing because, that's a hydraulic opening, and a a hydraulic closing of those type of vehicles, but yes, reasonable condition.
And finally, with respect to the vector management, you said you were gonna basically use rat bait and the like. What is the estimated time that the municipal solid waste is gonna be sitting in the facility?
If you had an extended weekend, you could potentially have a few, 2-3 days max. The turnover is very, very quick. And the reason being is the storage on the floor, we have a couple thousand tons of storage maximum on the waste tipping floor. So you only have 2 days of capacity and you have to turn it over anyways.
Okay. I have
Just one question. The rail cars will be loaded inside the facility. How long will they be sitting outside the facility before they're moved on?
I think Scott indicated that the CSX services that rail line 3 days per week. So if there are any full cars on the line, they would get coupled and removed, and at the same time, empty cars would get decoupled and replaced.
I have a question. How would they control the odors from cars sitting outside until they're hooked?
And Scott did answer this a little bit. The construction and demolition debris goes in a rail car gondola. No odors. I've never dealt with a facility associated with that type of odor. There's no food source or trustable waste within construction and demolition debris. As with MSW, there are certain CSX standards right now. The CSX standard is to go in what's called an intermodal car. So that's a closed lid sealed container. They're essentially watertight, airtight. CSX is looking at other pilot studies to use intermodal wrapping, which would be wrapped and sealed in an airtight something. That has not come down from CSX. They're going through the beta test right now in New Jersey. So it's to be seen on what modes of transportation. And the reason being, your question is a good one. Just remember that when these rail cars leave, as Scott said, it goes to Framingham, then it goes to Silkport, New York. It might sit there for a while. So your concerns are CSX's concerns as well. So they're pretty cognizant of the fact that they don't want to have any nuisance odor conditions or issues at their rail sidings. And you might have driven around Massachusetts. CSX has rail sidings everywhere. You're like, why are those train cars sitting there? So same with this.
Thank you.
I have a question. I heard it mentioned twice, if no rail is used, is that like a worst case scenario, and how would that occur?
Would you repeat the question?
The question was, what happens if you don't use rail? That means that you obviously would be taking live floor trailers there to load it out into large vehicles. You'd be taking the smaller vehicles and consolidating it into a 100 cubic yard live floor trailer and loading it out. What could happen with the rail? It's Murphy's Law. Is there a strike? Is there something that they would have to use a larger trailer to load the waste either in the rail loadout area, which can also receive trucks, or pull a large truck into one of the tipping bay doors and load it out. All the traffic that we did, the traffic studies estimated that we would be using trucks 100% of the time. So the reduction with trucks is just a benefit. We wanted to look at the worst case scenario in case we could use one rail car.
So the intent is to only use rail car to move the material out of the facility?
The intent for the construction and demolition debris that does not need to be recycled is right now to move it by rail car. At this point in time, the MSW might go all long haul.
Okay.
They would like the either or option. It really depends on, there's more and more receiving facilities each day, these subtitle D landfills in other states that are making it more available for rail cars, but it's an ever-changing dynamic presently.
Okay, and am I correct in my memory that the MSW would be about 40%?
I believe Scott said that he expected 60% C&D and 40% MSW, but those ratios can change. You know, MSW is generated basically on a per capita basis. There's a lot of studies out there that says, you know, I don't exactly know what it is, but let's say it's 1 ton per person per capita. With C&D waste, it really depends on a lot of different factors, such as the city. Is it an older city or a new city? Are they doing, is there a lot of construction happening? And construction waste is temporary waste. The waste at your house, when you remodel your kitchen, you don't remodel your kitchen every year. So the amount of waste and where it geographically come from for C&D is ever changing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I just ask, make sure I understood, Mr. Worson, you said the inbound truck was 77 trips per day, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes, these are not average daily trips, that's inbound. And so, and your traffic projections are conservatively based on all the waste coming in on those trucks going out by truck. That's your worst case scenario for traffic?
That's correct. So 77 inbound trucks, 36 outbound trucks, and 24 employee trucks. And one way in is called a trip, and one way out is called a trip. So you'd have 137 inbound trips, which means you need 137 outbound trips, for a total of 274 trips.
Yeah.
Secondarily is what we used is we used quantitative data from 2 facilities to come up with our numbers. We had 6 months of data that we used from CMAS, and we also collected existing data from 1,000 ton per day MSW and C&D facility by rail that's in time. So they were very good in sharing their numbers for the last 4 months. They just opened this year, but they gave us all our skill tickets so that we knew what we would see for average waste when we did this traffic study. So it's not just from like a manual, like we opened up a book and they said it. We used our real quantitative numbers.
Okay, I imagine there'll be more questions later. But anything further from the board, Mr. Blake? Thank you, Mr. Worson. Mr. Mack, I'll call you next week.
So we're finished with the 3 planned presentations. So as I mentioned earlier, we also have Phil Viveros from the Command Traffic Engineers and Planners, and we have Frank Kuhn, President of Air and Noise Compliance, here to answer questions with regard to that. So if you would like them to, they can come to the microphone and answer questions you may have that lingered from those presentations. We just didn't want to add to the duration of the hearing by putting somebody up that you didn't necessarily want to hear from.
So they will be available to answer questions.
Yes, if questions come through the audience or to the board, then...
Okay, may I, it's acceptable to the chairman. I'm going to make a suggestion. I have reviewed the request to intervene as a party. Based on the presentations to date and my pre-existing familiarity, I do not believe anyone qualifies as an abutter, as that term is used in the regulations. However, every request to intervene as an abutter or as on other bases are also treated as requests to participate. So everyone who has filled out a request to intervene as a party is also functionally requested to participate. I think we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 10 people identified who want to participate. Participants are allowed to present testimony, to argue orally and at the close, and ultimately to submit a brief. I'm not sure if anybody here is intending or wants to submit a brief. What I'd like to suggest is that we take about a 5 to 10 minute break right at this moment to allow people to collect their thoughts about what they want to ask in light of this. I'm seeing some head shaking. Is that, would you care to, if I may ask, is that a problem for you, ma'am?
Yeah, but I gotta work.
How about we take a 1 minute break and everybody can stand up and stretch, and then we'll, I think beg your pardon?
Yeah.
Oh, the stenographer has requested, I'm sorry. We have had a request for a somewhat longer break, but we appreciate people's need to get to work. Why don't we make this 3 to 4 minutes? Thanks. All set. The meeting will return to order. Thank you. I know some people are particularly constrained and need to get going. I am going to do this list in the order that I have it. Is there anyone who really needs to, I'm sorry to put it this way, but who urgently needs to leave, and we'll be glad to move you to the front of the list. Okay, thank you. Let me start first with Dennis Holman. Come forward, please. Mr. Holman, would you, if you would, come forward if you, so make sure the board can hear you. Do you just want to speak briefly? If there is no need for this to continue, is it possible to turn it off for this projector?
We may need
We may need it. Okay.
Rich, how long does it take that to warm up?
Mr. Holman, raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm, under pains and penalties of perjury, the testimony you're about to give will be true, accurate, and complete? Thank you, that will do. Maybe if it's comfortable, can you step up to the microphone right over here? Or you can hold the microphone, whichever convenient. I want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Right here?
Very well.
I want to ask you people about the noise of the machinery, of the backup systems in this building. They're not going to be at night.
Okay, can you address that, Mr. Lemay?
So we changed the hours not to be operating past 7.
Okay, I just heard that this morning.
Yes, I know. You can thank Franklin Grazi for that.
Okay. Another thing while I got you.
Speak in the microphone if you would.
I asked you that.
I know. Turn around, it's fair play.
Now, I want to ask you about the byproduct of this. Is this a hazardous material that's going to be a byproduct?
Mr. Meyer, we're going to ask that the questions be put through you, just so we
Okay,
have some
the
control.
questions to me, and then I'll...
Just, if it's a problem, let us know, otherwise we'll just...
I'd ask Mr. Mackey, can one of your witnesses address the question of will hazardous waste be part of the materials of the facility?
This is not a hazardous waste facility. It's solid waste only.
I know that, but the byproduct, you said something about the byproduct of this waste.
Further, the question is, are there byproducts from the processing that will be hazardous waste?
There is no byproduct. The only thing we do is consolidate the loads and it leaves. We're not processing material at this facility. We have like machinery, for instance, in Millbury that has air separators and, you know, a whole separation line that has, that makes a byproduct. In this case, there's no byproduct. We're not processing. It just comes in, gets consolidated into a bigger vehicle and leaves. And it happens fast because think about it, you're out of, you can't, the minute you would have too much in the building, you're out of business. It has to move quickly.
Now, one more question. Lots of trucks coming in. See, nothing is done outside of the building. But on a wet day, the trucks come in, they drop their load, tires take stuff out of the building. Follow me? And the odor will be out there. And I've seen it done before. The old system did the same thing.
I'm not sure I can repeat the question, but I think it is that on rainy days, trucks come in, they are affected by the rain and the water from the rain, the rainwater necessarily coming off the trucks has odor. Is that your question?
It's gonna draw it out.
It's gonna
Takes
draw
it
it
out of the building.
Okay, Mr. Levine.
You like debris, Dennis?
Like getting.
The tires will take stuff out of the building.
Yeah, like papers and things like that.
So I just want to make sure I fully, I think I understand, but I wanted just a clarification so I fully understand. You said like versus the old system. What old system are you referring to?
Jungle Road, same thing down there. The trucks used to go in, they dump their loads, but they drag everything out.
So the way that we control any of the way that we control that is that we dispose in the building and then we have, we keep paved surfaces swept so that it doesn't track material off. And we actually, so the whole idea, the whole issue is in your maintenance program to make sure that you keep clean surfaces. And that's pretty easy at a well-run transfer facility.
I don't know how you can imagine, keep sweeping it away on a rainy day, we keep running water in and taking it out.
I think you've made your statement for the record. I'm not sure I know how to characterize that in a question, but thank you. Do you have something else?
That's it.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Jim Whiting,
Whitney, I'll defer to the end.
you pardon me?
I'll defer to the end.
Okay. I'm going to need help with Peter Dandini, is that correct?
Yeah, Peter Dandini, yes, I'll defer to the end as well.
Okay. Tom Dehart, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Okay, if you would address your questions to me, and then I will characterize them over to you.
They've commented twice now, they're gonna go from, they want 1,000 tons, possibly 3,000 tons. 1,000 tons is 42 tractor trailer loads coming in and coming out. That's 84 trips of tractor trailer at the corner of Tanzio Way. Times 2 or 3, that's up even more. Tanzio is a horrible turn for a tractor trailer. It's a horrible turn for a straight truck. How are you going to correct this problem? Because there's going to be tie-ups, and the guys are going to get impatient, they get engaged all the time. They are going to go through the other neighborhoods. That's just a fact of life.
A question has been raised about the problems of the turns on Tanzio Road, future operations beyond the current capacity that's being discussed here tonight, and how are you going to deal with the truck operators who are have an incentive to move as quickly as possible and perhaps take shortcuts within the residential neighborhood?
So those intersections were part of the traffic study that said that we did not have a detriment, and then they were reviewed by another third-party consultant that, also had looked at it from a determination of safety. So we've had now full-blown traffic analysis and review.
Okay, what time of day were those traffic studies done?
What time of day was the traffic studies done?
Just for the record, Phil Ladaris with McMahon Associates.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to raise your right hand.
I believe I was sworn in.
Oh, I'm sorry, you were. That's
yes,
correct.
Thank you. Can I ask you to repeat your question? I'm sorry.
What time of day were the traffic studies done?
The traffic study, the counts, you're talking about the counts for our study when we counted traffic?
Yes.
Those were done in June of this year. We counted during the commuter peak hours between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m.
And you came up with how many vehicles at that time?
How many vehicles for the intersections for our site? I just want to make sure.
From your morning commute and your evening commute, how many vehicles per hour at that time?
At that intersection?
Yep.
We have those reports are in our, those numbers are in our traffic study. When we did traffic count, so I've got the 3 intersections. So is there a specific street you're looking at?
Tanzio.
Tanzio. So coming into Tanzio, during the morning peak hour, 5 trips in, 4 trips out during the morning peak hour.
What are you talking about, 5 trips? You're talking trucks in and out?
trucks and vehicles, is that out? Yep.
That's a farce, because right now there is, but when they move in, there's gonna be a lot more than that.
So are you,
There is a disagreement about the numbers. Could you tell us more about the methodology to?
so the numbers I just quoted to you are the traffic count, that's from the traffic count data that we conducted.
It is present today.
Present today, correct. And then for the afternoon period, those numbers are 3 vehicles in, 9 vehicles out.
Okay, did you sit there and wait for the tractor trailers from Crest to leave at afternoon rush hour? It takes them 20 minutes to leave.
Maybe we could rephrase that question, tell me if it's all right, as to tell the methodology used to count the vehicles. Is that the substance of your question?
Well, I'm talking to you just counting the vehicles on 117 going by at that hour. There's a lot of them. It takes a long time to get out of Tanzio Way at rush hour.
Would it help to hear the methodology that was used?
Yes.
I mean, I think you've used the word farce, so maybe it's going to be a source of disagreement, but I think there's nothing else that can be done except talk about methodology, and recognizing the traffic methodologies may not comport with what is common human experience on the ground.
So one of the things that we did look at was sight distance in terms of the ability to see from Tanzio Road, how much visibility that you have. That's documented in our traffic study, and the requirements for stopping sight distance that's available are satisfied. So any vehicles that would see a truck exit Tanzio Road to come south on 117 would be seen, and there would be enough distance for a vehicle to react.
Is that at the speed limit? That's determined at the speed limit.
So the question is, does that take into consideration speed limits?
We actually looked at the analysis, looking at 5 miles over the posted speed limit, which would be a 40-mile-an-hour analysis for 117.
Okay, and anybody that lives anywhere near there will tell you people are going 50 miles an hour through there.
Can I have a quick sidebar?
Yes. Let's have Mr. Blake involved too. Excuse me, a sidebar is where counsel confer with the hearing officer, generally off the record, to address a particular point. Any other statements to make?
I do. A lot of trucks coming in with construction debris will not be covered. There's a DOT regulation that allows them to not cover certain loads. There will be dust and debris. That's a fact. I work at a facility that a lot of trucks do come in with debris like that, and they are uncovered because it'll wreck the parts or whatever.
Are you comfortable stating the name of that facility?
PJ Keating.
Thank you.
PJ what?
Keating. There's going to be trucks that are going to be dripping wet loads from household waste, noise pollution from Jake brakes, bad adjusted brakes are going to howl. That's a concern for a lot of neighbors.
Okay.
Can I go into the river?
Thank you very much. Do you have further testimony in this regard?
There's a river not far behind us, part of the national tributary. If the debris goes into the river,
it goes into the natural.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Richard Dondero.
Okay, it's all yours.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you affirm under pains and penalties of perjury, the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Could you state your name and address?
Rick Dondero, 691 Lancaster Street.
Thank you.
I'm speaking to you.
You're speaking to the board.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, it sounds like you guys got a pretty good grip on the building itself, the facility, as far as pollution, noise. My concern is more about the trucks coming and going. I don't know if I heard it correctly, but there is going to be waste removed from the facility on tractor trailers, not just using the rail?
That's true.
That's correct. Any estimate on how many vehicles that would be?
I think the testimony was that would depend on what is going on with the rail operations. I think the reference was to there are unpredictable situations, including strikes and the like. But Mr. Mackey, I don't know if Mr. LeMay would like to...
As long as we don't get into a cross-examination.
Yes, exactly. Mr. LeMay, do you want to try and clarify that that's still so?
So we ran all our estimates with the potential of 100% leaving by truck. That's very unlikely. So I don't mean to be ambiguous, but that is a worst case.
Sure.
But, you know, clearly the utilizing the rail is a very good option, and every time we utilize rail, we reduce truck trips. My experience at rail facilities is that, you know, a fair amount, 40 or 50%, and sometimes more by rail, and it's just it's purely an issue of circumstance.
So the type that's being removed.
I don't mean to be vague, but like you could have, like Greg referenced, you could have a CSX strike or something, or a problem with rail cars at a yard that, you know, getting to us, and as a result, there's always this balance between rail and truck. But we ran the traffic analysis is, at the very worst case, would be everything leaving by truck. So we believe that our truck count is high.
Sure, okay. Now, did I hear correctly, 84 trucks per day is what you guys are estimating?
Is that the question you want to hear further about the trucks? Because I think that was already addressed. My understanding was 78.
And I can answer that depending from the traffic study. So in terms of inbound trucks, so these are loads, coming in, C&D loads, MSW. 77 vehicles per day are what we estimate for those vehicles. For the outbound trucks, which is what Scott just referenced, if in the, again, the worst case scenario that everything that's leaving the facility leaves by truck, which we expect to be, and this number I'm quoting you is an upper limit estimate, 36 would be the daily number.
So about
but we expect
50% of what gets trucked in gets trucked out.
Yeah, that 36 number we would expect to be less than that based on the use of rail that we didn't account for in our traffic study.
How fast did you process these trucks? In other words, are we going to have trucks lined up on Tanzio Road, idling, waiting to dump?
So
how fast do you process a vehicle?
Your specific question is regarding the details of how
someone comes in down the road.
Someone comes in.
What's the process? How long do they sit in the street?
Mr. LeMay, are you able to address that inquiry?
I will in just 1 minute.
Okay.
There'll be more. There'll be another day.
So we don't process waste there, so it's an incredibly fast process. So the queuing would be significantly reduced.
So they drive in, drive out. They're not sitting there.
They move quickly.
So no.
Like the times where I've had any times that we've had like queuing issues usually relates to a facility that has like a full-blown process in the building, and like something happens in the process and there's a holdup. There's a holdup. But we don't. This is a very simple operation of just consolidating the smaller loads and leaving in larger loads. So it happens quickly, and there's very little queuing.
Does the board have any questions in this regard?
I do. If it were to happen where there was a backup, where would those trucks that are waiting, where would they be waiting? On premise?
They're all on site.
There's an area on site that those trucks could sit and wait?
Yes.
And what about idling?
We have to follow the idling rules. If you're idling over a certain amount of time, you have to shut the vehicle down.
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, thank you.
Now that you've changed your hours to not run through the night, 6 to 7 Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 Saturdays, What about the trucks coming? Are they gonna be people sitting, waiting all night for you guys to open up? Who's gonna regulate that? I
So
mean,
your question is, your question is...
they open up at 6.
If you open up...
I'm a
6,
truck driver, it's 8
yeah.
a.m.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing the expertise of a truck driver, and I don't mean that flippantly.
No, I'm not a truck driver, it's figuratively speaking.
You're just familiar with the industry. So, your question is, will the trucks be lining up, waiting for the facility to open in the morning? Mr.
Or
Lane?
trucks waiting to truck it out, you know, either way.
So when you're in a,
Somebody stole it on you.
What'd you say?
No, he's looking for his microphone.
when you're in a facility with that simple of an operation, nobody would come, you know, a truck driver is not gonna come and just wait an hour for nothing. It moves so quickly in and out because we don't have a major process going on in the building. They just it wouldn't make any sense to come and like wait an hour before because they're gonna be able to just come in and move quickly.
I live close to Pike Plus. I've seen trucks idle through the night. It's very loud, the pollution.
Yeah, so they
That's
might be
one
getting
truck.
a delivery from halfway across the
Right.
country or something, and they're coming, but in our business, people, you know, they know what the time
So it's usually on
would
an in and out basis, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's important to us in the neighborhood. If trucks are going to sit there all night idle, you just don't know.
Okay, do you have any?
I got a lot more, but I'll let some other people.
Thank you.
We'll be available later if you
Okay.
want to speak about anything.
Laura Seuss. I called one, I see two coming forward. Okay, who is with you? Steve and Laura Seuss. Would you both raise your right hands, please? Other right. Thank you. I didn't have to, I apologize. Do you affirm under pain of penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true, accurate, and complete? Thank you. And if you would, try and address your statements to the board, okay?
So the question is, anyone going to study the property value of the people that live right across
Why
the
don't we
street?
allow you to have the microphone, then you can hand it.
Has anybody done a study on the property value of the property of the houses right across the street?
So I'm trying to rephrase this, so really, properly, you should be addressing your testimony to the board. So I think what you can say, and I will assist in this regard, you have not heard anything in these proceedings about an assessment of property values in the immediate area. Is that correct? Okay, and I guess the board can make further inquiry on that. Beyond that concern, do you have further concerns?
Just, did I hear right, it was 100 trucks going in and out here every day?
No, I don't think that was the testimony, but you can address that to the board in the form of, please make sure you have an accurate count of the trucks going in and out of there every day. Would that be fair? Okay. Other subjects?
We got two properties right across the street there. I'm just wondering what's going to happen to the value of these houses. I understand progress is progress, but I don't know. Are we going to get a tax reduction?
That would be a matter for a municipal application. Like, I can't speak beyond that.
Just asking.
No, I understand, and I think the board has had the benefit of your testimony. If that's
What kind of water?
okay, let's make sure that then your testimony, if I may characterize it, would be what inquiry has been made about potential impacts on private drinking water supplies in the immediate area of the facility. Is that correct? Good. Thank you very much.
Sir, could you just spell your name for me? Because I'm not sure that you've done it.
S-E-U-S-S.
And your first name?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lana, L-A-N-A.
Thank you for getting the name. Lowell, Jessmer or Jessman?
All the first again, please.
Okay. John Nelson. Get three different ones. Mr. Nelson, would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm under pains and penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And please try to address your testimony to the board.
My name is John Nelson. I'm a resident, lifelong resident of Leominster. I'm here because my friend is Scott. I've known him for years, and I got to see him in action for the first time. He's a tremendous executive officer. I know his work, and I've seen his other facilities. Okay, and you know, in my life in Leominster, I've lived on Adams Street, Lancaster Street, Central Court, Rodwell Lane, Manchester Street, Independence Drive, and now I currently reside on Union Street. And what a lot is common in that, in my days, because I'm 72, we didn't have this kind of facility. My forefathers, okay, I lived across from chemical plants, you know, all over the place, all right? And, so here we are, we have this log plan which I've gone and walked on this model plan on Tansfield Drive, Tansfield Road. Okay, and it's like a basin, and it has a natural topography, okay, that shields minor residential properties around, and it has some commercial. And so the fabric of our community, of Leominster, has been industrial, commercial, and residential. And I've been part of that all my entire life. Okay, and there's an opportunity. The city, our community, with the state 10 years ago almost, saw to it that this should be an industrial property. And they were right. And they put $2.7 million, okay, to get this going. You know, and so we stand the right of having this plan, which is marvelously shared today with us, okay, and what they're going to construct. Okay, and use the rail lines. Okay, and by doing that, okay, they'll reduce the traffic, barring catastrophic conditions with the rails, but they'll reduce the traffic by trucks. All right, and so I just see this as a positive for us. We could add $150,000 of revenues from the tax base, okay, and I just want to speak in favor of you and proposal, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, if you would, could you state your address for the record, please?
Yes, 493 Union Street.
What street, sir?
Union.
In Leominster?
Yes, Leominster.
Thank you very much. Bill Roberts. Raise your right hand. Do you affirm under pains and penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And would you state your name and address, and then address your comments to the board?
William Michael Roberts. My address is 145 Malvern Street, Leominster. I am new to the town, the city, if you will. 7 months in. Newly constructed on the dead-end road. Built the house because of the dead-end road. Have a 7-year-old son that goes down the street every day on his bike when there's no snow on the ground. Down Tanzia with me, and now I'm going to have to worry about dodging 18-wheelers. Thank you for that. This is unacceptable. The gentleman, 2 people before me, asked a simple question. What is the property value decline that I can expect on the $450,000 house that I just newly constructed? Can anybody please give me an idea or a ballpark on which one of the council and table people would like to have this built in their backyard? Sir, you're the CEO of the company. Would you like this in your backyard?
I think
you said I had to correct my questions. I asked the question, now I'm asking again the question.
Well, I think that we've covered the subject.
I disagree.
Pardon me? No, I didn't say that the subject has been covered in terms of answering your question. I think you were addressing the same comment to the board of, has adequate evaluation been done?
Well, my question is to the board, and specifically the CEO, is would he enjoy having this facility within a football throw of my backyard or his backyard to pick this new building that he is proposing? I am in the construction industry. I am the director of engineering for the Wayne Fire Systems. I build and protect buildings like this for this man, everything from Dunkin' Donuts to million square foot office buildings and anyone in between. I have no problem offering this man my services to design and adequately protect his building on the fire protection side of it, if you can get it out of my backyard. I appreciate that you have a railway that you are trying to utilize. That sounds like it has variables built into place due to strike, which is going to increase the amount of traffic down the road in which I no longer will be able to viably use to safely get in and out of my neighborhood of my newly constructed home. Amongst my neighbors who just built the same house on either side, they thoroughly enjoy the property. Am I wrong? And now you're going to take that joy and you're going to destroy it. You tell me over 3 days for the long weekends that we can expect rail cars and debris and isolated trash, maybe construction, food waste, or other, but on the long weekends while everyone's trying to enjoy their 4th of July, you get to smell a whole bunch of butt crack while you're trying to barbecue and half the kids playing in the backyard on the slip and slide. Does that sound like fun to anyone besides not me? This is not something that I wanted in the neighborhood. This is not something that we were aware of. You may have said you publicly noted it. If it's posted on a door, that's not publicly noted. The only reason that I found out about this is because one of the due diligence of my neighbors came and put the notification on my truck. And that is why I'm here today. That's why my fiance is here today. And that's why all these good people that are here today have taken half of their work day to come in and tell you that this is not acceptable. I am all about forward progress, but let's pick a better location. There has to be one. I respect the $2.7 million that was put in there, but you're also not taking into account. You may have said you did a wildlife study. I know for a matter of fact because me and my son go out and check them out. There's a whole squad of deer that go and live down there. There's a gentleman who walks his dog down there every day, every single day. Unfortunately, I don't see him here, but I'm sure if he was, he would speak to how much he enjoys that. Okay? Now, that's number one. And no one can tell me at this point what the cost to my pocket's going to be. I've already lost half a day of work in here enjoying you guys' company. But I'm talking on the grand scheme of things. Of $450,000, which one do you want to buy my house if you can smell steak when you come in and go and see it?
I have to interrupt you because I think that is the 3rd time you've asked that question.
Because it's very aggressive
I don't
to a man
blame you
who has
because
spent
it's
every dollar he has to go and support the house in which he just built for his family.
As I said, please don't interrupt me. As I said when I speak.
Sure.
That question that you've posed, you've now posed it 3 times.
And you don't have an answer?
I do not.
Does he have an answer? He did lots of studies.
This is not a place where you can cross-examine because of your status as a participant. You cannot cross-examine. I think, from my perspective, you've made your position very clear on the record and to.
I thought maybe we would get lost in the accent. So.
Pardon me?
I thought maybe we would get lost in the accent.
I didn't notice an accent.
That's okay. I'm trying to shake it out. I've only been up here 11 years, and now here it is. I think I find my forever home, and here it is. You guys are trying to put a trash heap in the backyard.
Okay.
So now that was number one.
Okay. Number 2 would be.
Number 2. The impact study that you did, whichever one you guys did, by all means stand up here. I come down that road, it's literally the safest, most viable way to come in and out of our street. If you come, if you come through Malvern and you try and discharge from our neighborhood around Malvern, if anybody's been down there, you got a great shot like this on an icy day, you're hoping at best that you don't have to throw it in reverse, not to end up in the middle of 117. People hook around that road doing about 45, 50 miles an hour. Before you blink, that's your driver's side door.
You made a great shot gesture. Could you estimate what that great shot is?
I'm not a civil guy, but I tell you it's every bit of 75 feet on the incline.
Okay.
There's one turn off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses coming up that slope. Figure a house is
I just wanted to get your hand gesture on the record if possible.
Not a problem. You got a nice video. There you go.
It's our stenographer that we're
right.
concerned.
So you can't, if you're having a problem making the left and or the right out of there in a safe manner, and now you're taking the only secondary route out of commission because it's going to be blocked by 18-wheelers on the coming and going starting at 6 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. Now, why don't we have normal operating hours say, I don't know, 7 to 4, 7 to 5? Can we not adjust that if this garbage dump is going to move forward? I know I don't want to see a bunch of 18 18-wheeler backed up onto the road, onto 117. It takes me at least 3 to 5 minutes, depending upon how bad traffic is, just to turn up that road on TNTO. Now you put a bunch of 18-wheelers in there that my Dodge Ram, people almost clip me on my back right fender trying to go around me, yet alone putting an 18-wheeler. You're going to have somebody driving into somebody's house playing games like this.
You understand? Excuse me, one at a time.
I don't want to interrupt, but
No,
that's a valid statement.
It's my responsibility
And that's fine. And it's my responsibility to go represent the
It is
community.
also my responsibility to keep the evidence to that which is relevant material to the proceedings. You have made some very relevant material points for the board's consideration with respect to the traffic impacts and also with whether or not it's specifically relevant to the proceeding around impact on home value. As I said, the standard decision for the board is health, safety, and the environment. I'm sure the comments you're making are concern to the board and can form part of their consideration. It is my responsibility, though, to try and move proceedings along. So you would
I
say...
got 2.5 hours sitting here listening to every slideshow bullshit that they had to do. So if I can't get my 2 minutes to go and speak my piece, then there's something incredibly weighted against public opinion and what you're trying to do. It's unacceptable.
I do not want you to leave this proceeding feeling that you were cut off or that it was unacceptable. I have to be concerned about what's called cumulative evidence when multiple parties are making the same point, which is, of course, out of respect to other people who are here.
Oh, I understand. I'm having to hand the mic to
No,
everybody
you
else.
said you
We're all
had-
saying the same thing. It sounds like we have the same voice. Do we not? And my question to you is, what do I tell my 7-year-old now that I don't have any sidewalks for him to ride on the bike? And now you're taking the only other dead road that we can go and utilize. I mean, wouldn't you like to be able to teach your kids how to go and ride a bike? I'm just asking a question, man to man. Do you not want to teach your kids how to ride a bike safely without having to worry about getting clipped by an 18-wheeler? Just yes or no. I'll give you that point.
I am not in a position to answer that question, yes or no.
Can the CEO answer the question?
Excuse me, sir, I hate to keep reminding you, but it's my responsibility, one at a time.
Oh, perfect, go ahead.
You have made 2 points. I'm wondering, do you have a third point that you want to make?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what is that point?
Was there any other investigations as to another location that this facility could be built and flourish? We already have another trash recycling facility on 117. Are we now going to be Leominster, the city of trash dumps? Is that the new sales pitch to get people to come in?
Well,
I don't think
that's
that is the case.
Okay, so your point to the board is that there is already
Am I wrong?
a facility.
I'm new to the area, but am I wrong?
We cannot engage in rhetorical back and forth.
This is
I'm
a
sorry,
this
it's
is
just,
a direct question that I'm
please,
looking for yes or no.
you're speaking over me again, and the stenographer cannot get what you were saying because she'll be recording what I'm saying and not what you're saying. At this point, I'm going to have to ask you to either discontinue or to make summarily any further points that you want to make.
I will discontinue because this is a bit of a joke as it sits. We're talking about financial gains for some and what will be the depletion of fiscal build-up within our homes that we are definitely not going to be able to reduce. We're not going to be able to recover these things. I just went through this already in Lynchton, and now I'm in the Leominster with the prospects of hoping to see better prosperity. Now it's going to get kneecapped. Okay, that's number one. Now it's safety. I got no sidewalks for our kids to go and play on.
Sir, you're being, I hate to say it at this point,
You know what?
you're being redundant.
Yeah.
I think you have made your
Good talk.
points.
Best talk
and
yet.
Thank you for doing so.
Good day.
Next is Bill Roberts.
You just talked on what?
Pardon me?
That was him.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Mr. Roberts. Jaminka Brayton, I'm sorry if I did a bad job on that name.
What was the name?
Jasmin.
She left. She had to go to work.
Okay, that's too bad. Now, we return to 3 people who requested to be at the end. It's Jim, is it?
Jim left.
Jim what?
Jim left.
Jim left as well. Sorry. And then Peter Dandini. Dandini, would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm under pains and penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be true, accurate, and complete? Could you state your name and address, please?
Peter Dandini, 723 Willard Street, Leominster.
Anybody else? Did you get that?
Just a couple of quick notes here. There is a capacity crisis in Massachusetts as well as New England, which forces waste to be moved to longer distances and cost people and companies more money. Landfills are closing, my bills are skyrocketing, and it's only going to get worse. The rail service will help move material in a more cost-effective manner. It will also help every business and resident control costs. Rail is also good for the environment and will reduce carbon emissions, less trucks off the road. I have seen Mr. LeMay's facility in Millbury, and if you didn't know, landscaping has been my primary business for 32 years. I was completely amazed on how well landscaped that his facility is. And not only that, it looks like it fits right into the community of where it is. I just think that a facility like this in Leominster is absolutely needed for our trash recycling, and also the fact that it would be good for our tax base. That's all I have. I hope that the board will grant this in favor. Thank you.
I apologize. Did Lanya Seuss already speak? That was, thank you, I apologize. And I believe we have one person left who is Lowell Jensen, or Jesmer. Did I pronounce your name correctly, sir? Of course. Would you raise your right hand? Do you affirm under pains and penalties of perjury the testimony you're about to give will be true, accurate, and complete? I do. Could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Lowell Jesmer. I live at 149 Melbourne Street. My first question is, I'd like to know what was done to notify people in the area, the immediate area, all the neighbors.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm going to have to ask you to address your testimony to the board. So I think, if I may help initiate, you did not get, in your view, adequate notice of this proceeding.
I was notified by my neighbor who said someone came to his house at around 3 p.m. on a Friday. At the time, I'd say everyone was at work. And gave him a flyer that was a picture of a printout that was photocopied, hardly legible. So I took it upon myself to retype that and share this with everyone in the neighborhood. I would imagine a lot of you have seen this. You know, I just really can't believe all these balls that were dropped by this department to not notify anyone in the area, to sweep it under the rug, and make sure that none of us showed up today to give our testimony in this hearing. That's my first point. You know, obviously I'm worried about my property value. You know, we just built our dream house. We moved out here from Boston, Massachusetts. You know, we couldn't afford it there. We found a nice quiet community out here in Leominster. We're very excited. It's on the rail. You know, we feel it could be an up-and-coming community like Providence is. It's a quick ride into the city, and we should be trying to attract a younger generation who sees into the future. And I don't think we're going to attract the younger generation by being the first city in the state to have a landfill, or sorry, not a landfill, a waste transfer station this close to residential areas. You know, I've looked on Google Maps, and I haven't seen a single waste transfer station that is completely surrounded by residential and commercial zones. Typically, they're located on the far outskirts of the town, up to 1 mile or 2 miles away from any residences. Of course, there's exceptions where there's a few houses here and there, but none to the extent of our property. You know, along with that, one of my concerns is these vehicles, when they leave this transfer station, what is being done to make sure they're clean? If you look at the waste management station on 117, look at the pavement. It's disgusting. It's black because of all the dirt and debris falling off these vehicles. So what's going to happen to Tanzio Road? What's going to happen to 117? What's going to happen to all these people's front yards on 117? Are they going to become filled with trash? Are their houses going to be covered in this soot that is being produced by this facility? I understand that they're going to control all of that in the facility. No doubt in my mind, this is a state-of-the-art facility. My concern is everything once it leaves. What's stopping these truck drivers from 5 a.m. in the morning from using their engine brake, rattling all their windows in your house when you're trying to sleep, or when your child's trying to sleep. I haven't heard any solution for that. You can post as much as you want, no engine brake. But how are people going to follow that, and what will be done if someone does proceed, to create a nuisance? Another point that I think was very interestingly, completely not spoken about is there's a park within a half a mile. Between the park and this site is the Nashville River. The creek that runs on both sides of this property feeds the Nashville River. This river is something that we should be taking advantage of and really promoting as a clean source for everyone in the community to get out and enjoy. And I don't think having a river this close to a facility of this nature, with all the runoff, all the trash going out of these vehicles, is, in my mind, makes any sense. Nothing has really been said about how they're going to mitigate any of the noise again, with the trucks. I think we all sat in here, we heard 5 or 10 trucks backing up. Is that what I'm going to be waking up to every morning? Is that my new alarm clock?
Yep.
I don't think any of you would enjoy that. I don't think any of you would enjoy that. And, I find that the traffic study very interesting, especially in Massachusetts, that they tested it at 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. I don't know about you guys, but no one in Massachusetts drives 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. The minimum they're doing is 15 over, which makes that a 60 mile an hour zone. And being a resident, you come down that steep incline that Bill was speaking of, you're almost taking your life into your own hands every day trying to pull out. It's a very blind curve coming from one way, and the traffic is coming down on a downhill slope, 60 miles an hour, so you're trying to scoot out in front of them. Now, if you factor in an 18-wheeler, a 65-foot wheelbase vehicle, trying to turn left in front of you very slowly, what's someone going to do if they're on their phone texting? Are they going to plow into this vehicle? Are they going to veer off and plow into a home that's located on Route 117? And what's going to be done about that? Who's going to be responsible when our community is destroyed by someone not in our area? Another point I hadn't heard is there's no study on any migratory birds coming through the area, bats, other wildlife that lives in the area. Cranes fly above this area right now. How is that going to affect it, and how is that going to affect our greater community as a whole, not just our one area? I have no doubt that they'll be able to control the vermin in their facility, but how are they going to control those raccoons from coming to our neighborhood? Because they come and they feed on their area, and then they decide to take a roost, under my deck or in the hills behind the facility. These are areas that are not controlled by them. So how do we address that? The larger area as a whole, not just their 13.6 acre facility. I don't think there should be any vote taken today about this subject. I think every day should be used to screen the community, go and talk to people who live in the area. People who live on 117 in the condo complex farther up the road, they're going to be affected by this. People who live on 117 farther into the city, they're going to be affected by this. It isn't just a very subset, it's the entire community. Whether you're going to Walmart on 117 and, maybe you don't like going that way anymore because you're behind trash trucks.
Reliant. Medical center.
And I'd also like to hear anything that they have to say about how they're going to help the environment, help the local area. So all this, refuse flowing out of these vehicles after they leave. They haven't said anything about, we're going to make sure Route 117 is clean. We're going to have monthly cleaning crews out there. No, they're focused on one thing, and it's making themselves rich. It is not making our community any better.
May I just clarify something for the record? When you were talking about the grade, were you referring to, when you said Bill, were you referring to Bill Roberts?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to make sure I understood that.
And if I may, one more point. I'd also like to, I don't know, I'm sure you guys are familiar there. Route 117, that area, is a pothole-ridden mess. And these 287 trucks traveling over this at full capacity is going to turn that road into an even more pothole-ridden mess. So as taxpayers, we're going to be responsible for paying for that road that needs to be repaired because of the facility not owned by us. Thank you.
That completes the list of participants as I have it before me. And let me proceed to I'm going to repeat some things from previously, but the Board of Health has 45 days from today to issue a site assignment decision, either affirmatively or negatively. As I said again, the issue before them is whether this would constitute a danger to the public health, safety, or the environment based on the relevant siting criteria and on all the testimony they've heard here today. So I previously mentioned, I'll repeat again, it's not simply a matter of up or down, yes or no, because the board is imbued, or the board has the authority to impose limitations in its site assignment on the facility and at the extent, character, and nature of the facility, so it will not present a threat to public health, safety, or the environment. To make clear, the board's decision shall be based on the evidence of record, which includes the documents and the live testimony that we've had admitted into evidence today. The site assignment regulations do allow for the filing of briefs, and that will be up to the board in terms of whether they act today. I don't know if anyone wants to file a brief. I certainly think people have made their points here today. So the administrative record will consist of all the admitted exhibits and the stenographic record, and the decision itself when the board makes its decision. Each board member should review the record and at a public meeting, noticed under the open meeting law, as this meeting has been, deliberate in open session and vote on the site assignment modification. The final decision should be in writing, signed by the board members. The decision should contain a statement of reasons and determination of facts pertaining to the site suitability criteria or the law necessary to the decision, and any special conditions that you as board members believe are necessary, reasonable, and appropriate. Lastly, the decision, once it is made, has to be published in the newspaper, as was the notice for this, within 7 days of its issuance. Whether or not the citing assignment is issued or denied, any appeal is to Superior Court under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 14. Just to be clear, the court review is not live. The court review is not through witnesses at court, but is rather a record review. So that's why this record we put here together today is so important. That is, there's no trial with testifying witnesses, so the proceeding will be the administrative record with motions made to affirm or deny the decision or overturn the decision. Does anybody have any questions on what I've just said? Well, I want to thank the board and staff, the witnesses, our stenographer, and legal counsel, and all of you for your attentive participation and your testimony. You all did a great job. Mr. Chairman, it's now time for me to ask you to call for a motion to close the public hearing, entertain a motion, and then vote on that. And then my participation in the public hearing will be concluded, and you can continue with your ordinary public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just briefly speak to the
Blake.
board. As the hearing officer has indicated, by entertaining a motion to close the evidentiary portion of this hearing, there will be no more evidence that will be submitted to you. I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that.
Mr. May I make one comment with regard to that record?
Yes?
I think because of the questions that have been asked tonight, this morning, we ought to get into the record the Woodard and Kern review and Beta review because that discusses the traffic
I'm sorry,
studies.
to get into the rest
Okay,
of it.
maybe should Mr. Knuth explain what those are?
Sure.
Ms. Knuth, can you explain what Woodward and Curran did on behalf of the city?
They've actually reviewed all the applications that we've received, and they came up with a few questions and comments, and they have been addressed by UMM's consultants at this point. If you'd like, I can have our consultant, Alan Benavides, explain that a little further.
I don't think that, I just need the documents in the record.
I think there is correspondence, or there is a document that Mr. Benavides prepared, and I think if I understand Mr. Mack correctly, and without objection, if that's so, or Mr. Blake, we'd like to have that review entered into the record. That would be, therefore, Exhibit Q, I do believe.
Sir, can I have one thing for the record?
Pardon me?
Can I have one thing for the record?
You want to offer a document?
Yes, I would. So this is signed by some of our neighbors in the area who are opposed to it, who couldn't make it.
In short notice.
Okay, could you again identify yourself?
Yeah, no problem. Lowell Jesper, 149 Melbourne Street.
And you have presented to me a petition to block the application for a site assignment of solid waste facility located 210 Seal Road, Leominster, Mass, signed by, to the best of your knowledge, residents of the town of Leominster.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. That'll be Exhibit R. Do we have Exhibit Q?
Q with me. So it's R and S.
Pardon me?
R and S.
R would be this petition that I just received.
Okay.
So Q would...
We were up to Q, I believe.
Okay, the hearing exhibit list that I have has exhibits A through P on it.
Yeah, we added one MEPA certificate, so we went to R. That's going to have to be revised. I'll send it to you. So we're going to be with 3 more after R.
Okay, and with that revised exhibit list, hearing exhibit list, you will add the Woodward and Curran correspondence and this petition.
Correct. The Woodard and Curran is 2 letters, one from Woodard and one from Beta. But
Okay.
they're packaged together.
Will you consolidate those or have those as 2 separate exhibits?
We can put them in together.
Okay. Any other business or housekeeping items? Mr. Blake, you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, so we can have a motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a motion
I
to
make a
close?
motion to close the public hearing. Second.
With that said, I repeat, thank you all very, very much, and thank you to the board for retaining me, and Mr. Knuth for setting up, and I hope everybody gets a chance to enjoy the Christmas trees on their way out. Thank you for coming, and with that, I declare this meeting closed.
If I may just make clarification for you guys in the audience, they've closed the public participation portion of this hearing. They will now need to deliberate on this application. You guys are, well, it's up to the chair, of course, whether or not he allows you to say anything, but typically there's no further input from the public, but you're certainly allowed to stay here and listen to their deliberation, or your other option, board members, is to continue the meeting to a date certain at which you come back and you deliberate and you vote on the application. Understand you have 45 days though, so there is a clock.
Next Wednesday's the 12th and the 19th. Want to do just a regular meeting? Any preference? Want to do the 12th?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. That's next week, actually. Hearing is closed.
make a motion to move the continuation of this meeting until December 19th, 7:30 a.m. Room 10? Room 10, which is
Upstairs.
upstairs.
Now you can make a motion to close the
Okay, now I make a motion to close the Board of Health meeting.
second.